Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Now we'll be having moderating that raffle round.
Dr. Anita, it is interrupted. The audio is interrupted.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, the audio is interrupted while we were talking. I'm not sure whether all others have the similar experience.
Dr. John will be doing the raffle round now. I'll wait. Yes, Dr. John. Can you unmute Dr. John? Can
I've already unmuted her, doctor. But we cannot hear her.
Yeah, me too. Okay. Dr. John, can I start? Or you want to do the raffle round first?
Dr. Anita, can you make her a co-host?
No, we cannot. Can you hear? Dr. John is muted. Okay, Dr. John, we'll start the session because we are running out of time. Is that okay? Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon sessions in Channel 1. ICON-MEGOPIC 2001. I am Dr. Anita from School of Medicine, Taylor's University, Malaysia. I'll be the channel 1 lead. And the student ambassadors are Mr. Sean and Miss Mimi, third year medical students from Taylor's and National Defense University. Let me share quickly the events in channel 1. The first part of this session, which focuses on the topic PM to 2:30 PM. So Prof. Karim will be the chairperson for this session. We will be hearing from our invited speaker and also 3 oral presenters who will be highlighting their research in this field. The next part of the session, actually, we have an invited speaker followed by 3 oral presenters, which focuses on maternal and child health. I would like to reinforce that we'll be using the slido.com and also the QR code you can see, QR code you can see in the slide for our Q&A session. Following each presentation, we have Q&A session for 5 to 10 minutes. Either you can use this QR scan to code, this QR code to scan and put your questions, or you can use the slido.com with the code number. The final session will be chaired by Dr. Subhash Patel, and there are 2 expert speakers who will be discussing about the COVID curve and its management, and we'll finish this session by 5 p.m. So 5 p.m. I would like to inform the audience to join the main link, that is the main Zoom link, where we have the awarding ceremony and also the closing of our ICON-MEGOPIC 2021. So without further ado, I would like to invite our chairman for the first session, Dr. Associate Professor Dr. Abdul Karim Mira Mohedin. He is a radiologist and associate professor in School of Medicine, Taylor. Radiology for more than 40 years. He is an active researcher. He has received several awards and he has numerous publications in several journals and is also a member in many scientific committees. He has also published in many journals and widely he has presented at local, national and international conferences and meetings. So welcome Professor Abdul Karim to chair this first session. Back to Prof. Karim.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anita, for your kind introduction. Really, I'm privileged to be here, especially for the students' event, because they are always very near to my heart and very dear to my heart also. So I'm really very much pleased to be here. And to be the chairman, to start with, I think we have a very good international speaker, Dr. Helena, and she is from National Defense University, Malaysia. And she will be giving a main lecture today, followed by 3 other presentations from our student side. This invited speaker, Dr. Helena, she's actually after finishing her advanced medical degree, main lecture today, followed by she joined the Ukraine Army Force, and immediately she was commissioned as a military officer there. And she served with the military as well as in the medical academy, conducting postgraduate teaching as well as research. And she also was involved in humanitarian service, especially in African countries, Congo and Georgia. Also, she went for in the humanitarian assistance to marginalize the population of especially war-affected areas. Upon retirement from the military service, she has been employed, fortunately, by Malaysia at the National Defense University, and she's working in the Faculty of Medicine and Defense Health. Actually, her area of research is on infectious diseases, international public health, and disaster management. She has received several awards in public health, and she has numerous publications as well as books. And she has presented widely at national and international conferences. And without further ado, I invite Prof. Helena to take the platform. Dr. Helena, the stage is yours. And Dr. Helena's video will be played now, and she's available for question and answer, live question and answer. As Dr. Anita has put, you can send your questions through the slide com or through the scan QR code, which is projected. Dr. Helena, your video, please.
Dr. Anita, you can start playing the video.
Dear audience, welcome to my talk on epidemiology. Of epidemics, which it is, but it is much more than that. Epidemiology is concerned with the whole populations rather than individuals, and it is focusing on our understanding on how the diseases or other health conditions are distributed and what are the causes and sources of diseases and what are the methods for their control and prevention. Epidemiologists usually are trying to find the cause for the outbreak, and then they're trying to find those who are at risk, and they're trying to decide on how to stop the spread or to prevent it from further spread in future. That's why epidemiologists are very often called disease detectives. Let us now talk about the achievements of epidemiology from a historical perspective. It is unquestionable that epidemiology has helped to save programs. Talking about infectious diseases, the success in their controlling, which happened in the beginning of the 20th century, was largely due to the improvement in water supply, hygiene and sanitation, antibiotic delivery, and vaccination, of course. But the role that the so-called pure epidemiologic method played is also very significant, such as epidemiological disease outbreak investigations and disease surveillance. Numerous epidemiologic studies have helped to understand nutritional deficiencies such as pellagra. Also, a lot of studies on the risk factors for cardiovascular diseases contributed to a remarkable almost 50% decline in the mortality from these diseases. The works of in a decline of tobacco use and associated morbidity and mortality. But what about nowadays? Of course, nowadays epidemiology remains at the forefront of saving lives. During the current COVID-19 epidemics, epidemiologists, through analyzing the data on infections and deaths from COVID, and through projecting the models on viruses spread, inform the authorities in their decision-making. And some of those decisions are nowadays commonplace, such as country lockdowns, mandatory social isolating, quarantines, and mask wearing. Epidemiology is split into two complementary subdisciplines. One is descriptive epidemiology, which deals with gathering the data and identifying who are those who have the disease, where, and then this information will feed another subdiscipline, which is called analytic epidemiology. And analytic epidemiology deals with building and testing the models of the cause of the disease, and then it helps in identifying the principles of how this disease or the outbreak can be stopped and controlled. So these principles are very much applicable to our understanding of the current COVID-19 epidemics. Let's think of the early stages of the epidemic when the descriptive epidemiology approach was implemented. Almost immediately, the data on vulnerable population, for example, was identified. So such as senior people, those with critical illnesses. But then very soon it fed the analytical phase. So identified as coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, and then almost immediately the relevant measures how to control this pandemic were suggested. So that's why these principles are applicable for the COVID-19. Epidemiology is a highly complex science because it deals with multiple variables related to all three components of epidemiologic triad, such as agent, host, and environment. So it deals with the pathogen, with the human, social, or traveling dynamics, for example, or the climate issues. So the Simon Flexner in 1922 stated that each generation receives its particular impression of epidemic diseases. In other words, each generation tries to interpret in their own way what temporal relationship is. And for example, the pandemic in 1918 was a disastrous event worldwide, but the lessons learned from that pandemic has actually informed the science of epidemiology a lot, because the public health experts were seeking for more complex understanding of epidemiology based on the lessons learned from that epidemic. So they were looking into more detailed and more accurate interpretation of the emergence of the disease, equilibrium of the disease, and ultimately the decline of the disease. Other outbreaks, more recent pandemics such as SARS in 2003 and H1N1 influenza in 2009 have also contributed with some lessons and knowledge on epidemiology. COVID-19 is no exception, and it has been changing the science of epidemiology as well. So first, and the rapid changes that are happening have to be almost immediately shared with across the globe with this epidemiologists in other regions, and the informing the public health policies, and therefore data sharing through online platforms has become one of the most important characteristics of the current epidemics. Secondly, it is almost impossible to imagine epidemiology nowadays without the contribution of other basic sciences such as physics, mathematics, computer science, who contribute to the knowledge with their ideas and with their expertise. Thirdly, this current epidemic highlighted the role that descriptive epidemiology plays and the importance of rigorous collection. Descriptive epidemiology is often looking for causal relationship. Even medical students, when they try to go into their pioneering first research, they always have a tendency to overlook descriptive epidemiology. They are looking for hypothesis testing and significant p-values. But the COVID-19 pandemic has actually proven how important it is to very accurately collect the raw data and to analyze it as accurate as possible in terms of place, person, and time. And finally, knowledge transition. So almost immediately after there is any change in epidemic situation, the healthcare and public health policymakers have to be informed, because this information is later on transformed into the guidelines on treatment, interventions such as lockdowns or quarantines. Now let's talk about how epidemiology is taught in medical schools. So usually, apart from just imparting knowledge on or imparting quantitative or information literacy, and also some understanding of the scientific methodology, the part of teaching epidemiology include also some ethical aspects, teaching on how to solve the problems as a team, and also how to apply critical thinking. So usually medical students find epidemiology and biostatistics challenging. This is maybe due to some lack of confidence in math, and also maybe partly because some of the students do not fully understand the relationship between the concepts of epidemiology and sciences, which are much more familiar to them. In descriptive epidemiologies, there are two measures that are the most widely used, which are called incidence and prevalence. By incidence, we understand the number of people who develop disease over a certain period of time, and by prevalence, we understand the proportion of population or the number of people in a population who have the disease at some certain point in time. Both these measures, they contribute to another very important concept in epidemiology, which is a concept of establishing risk. And there are different types of risks in epidemiology. There is absolute risk, which is basically the same as incidence. And absolute risk is the risk of developing a disease, basically, in somebody who is exposed to a risk factor, for example, like on this, among children who were swimming in a swimming pool is almost 13% or 12.9%. This is absolute risk. But there's something called relative risk, which is a bit more tricky to be interpreted intuitively. So the relative risk gives us an information on if you do something, how much higher will be your risk compared to if you do not do it. For example, the risk of giardiasis in children who were swimming in a swimming pool was more than 3 times greater than the risk of developing giardiasis in those who did not swim in the swimming pool. And finally, there is something called attributable risk, And an attributable risk is the proportion of the proportion of the people who develop disease, which is attributable to exposure. Finally, let's look at how teaching of epidemiology was affected by the current COVID-19 pandemic. First of all, of course, COVID-19 has increased the demand of public health professionals. Therefore, the number of courses that teach epidemiology and biostat have to be increased. Secondly, the real life experience of study is there. So now when we read about the outbreaks, about the examples and situational some of the examples of the outbreaks and the diseases, we can relate to that. Some of those examples are just in front of us, and many people have experienced it either directly by themselves or has been affected by it indirectly through losing their jobs or some other socially related factors. And finally, maybe new courses have to be introduced, such as, for example, the how to do the disease outbreak investigation for highly, how to implement the surveillance for contact tracing, and maybe how to incorporate the principles of modeling into epidemiology and public health. So with that, I want to finish my presentation, and thank you very much for your interest and attention.
Thank you, Prof. Halina, for your excellent talk, right from the historical contribution of epidemiology until the current era of coronavirus 19. And you were elaborately discussing about the fundamentals of epidemiology and how the teaching of epidemiology is factored in the coronavirus era. Of course, epidemiology is the teaching of what, who, when, where of the diseases and public health. It's very, very important, and the students must develop interest in knowing what exactly the epidemiology of each and every disease. Now, Prof. Halina will be answering some of your questions. So the participants can send their questions. They can ask the questions also. They can send by chat box or a QR code. Okay, meanwhile, while we wait for the questions, let me ask Prof. Helena for her expert opinion. She was talking about giardiasis, and there is a report that giardiasis was not absolutely or correctly reported. There was under-reporting. And from current situation also, I can think that there is under-reporting of coronavirus 19 also in certain countries due to many factors. What do you think about it, Prof. Helena?
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. Karim. If you're talking about under-reporting, there could be various reasons for that. First of all, there could be some problems with testing. Yeah, so as we can see, the current epidemic of COVID showed there's a varying number of tests, and there's a lot of confusion with regards to the tests, right? Secondly, there could be problems with transmission of the data. Both the diseases, both giardiasis and COVID-19 for that matter, they have something in common, such as both diseases are not very, they don't have that much of manifestation. They can go asymptomatic often, right? So the data transmission problem could be, is happening now with COVID, when there is a tremendous loss of simply report. There's lots of data that has been missed while recording it. And also the reporting standards are very different in very different countries. But just to, let's say, to summarize, the public health as a field of science and practice is very largely affected by social factors and social political factors, right? So we know that the decisions that are made, they're not 100% based on scientific knowledge, unfortunately. So very often the public health authorities are influenced by some political decisions and political willpower. For example, in many countries, the public health was underfunded. And why did it happen this way? Is because there was no political willpower to support and to maintain the relevant quality of public health. And then talking about the decisions and the let's say the quality of reporting, what can you do if a president of a country is telling officially and openly that COVID-19 does not exist, like it happened in case of Tanzania recently? I hope you all guys have heard about it, right? If the president, sorry, prime minister or a president, I'm not sure about it, but the leader of a nation is saying that there is no pandemic. So how much can you then rely on the accuracy of the reporting? So that is so. But I think, Prof. Karim, just in the end, I just want to say that COVID-19 moves very fast through the population. So of course, we have to concur with that. So that's why the reporting, the data, the movement of the data also should go at least with the same speed and commitment as COVID moves through the populations. Thank you very much. Should I proceed? I can see a second question. Should I proceed with that?
Yes, please. In your opinion, what Malaysia can do better in terms of combating this pandemic?
Well, that is a very, very serious question. And I think if you want to answer it, let's say, we want to get a high quality answer, it will take a very long time. But if you just want a shortcut for that, I think that it has been explicitly described actually by our speakers, plenary session speakers. But actually, if you ask my opinion, Malaysia is doing quite well. And it was doing quite well before the current wave, especially, right? We were all very proud and we were all congratulating ourselves on this success. But again, this is an unprecedented large-scale pandemic that many countries, no matter how confident they felt in terms of their public health response, they felt very confident. But then in the end of the day, this pandemic was playing bad jokes with them. So I think Malaysia is already doing quite well. They're on the country is on the right track. And with the support of the government and with the political willpower to support the activities and the actions, I hope that we can manage and combat it the way we are doing it now already. So the component, the support from the top-down support, and also of course, the community engagement is very important. The community response. So Malaysia, compared to other countries, even though here when we are in Malaysia, I'm considering myself a Malaysian because I've been living here for so many years. We can criticize that there's some drawbacks, but if you compare it, everything is relative. If you compare how Malaysia can mobilize social mobilization resources of this country compared to other nations, are quite satisfactory. They're quite high. So I think we're on the right track. Thank you very much.
Correctly said, Prof. Alina. In connection with this question, I'm thinking of another context. I think we are closely following the epidemiology of coronavirus. We always, from the eastern side, we always think that the Westerners are well developed and those countries are economically in a very high position and they can deal very well with any infectious diseases. But on the contrary now, we are seeing that all the Western countries and also United States of America, which is supposed to be the leading country in the world, and they are showing a very high incidence of Corona-19 and their, what I say, sorry to say, the public health is not able to combat this. How come it is? Even though those two populous countries like Indonesia and India, they are also showing high incidences, but still they are being pushed by these Western countries. They are leading ahead. What could be the reason?
Yeah, that was actually, in fact, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask today our plenary speakers, but unfortunately there was no choice to ask. I had the question, for example, why the contact tracing, many countries, rich and developed countries, they badly failed, right? Whereas some countries showed great success. So that is a very complex issue, Prof. Karim, and I thank you very much for raising our awareness about it, which we still yet have to analyze and give the answer to it. We meaning that the global community, research community, because this is the biggest surprise, I would say, right? The biggest surprise of this outbreak, in terms of how different countries, supposedly very developed and very successful countries, they badly failed, right?
Nicely and very effectively dealt with by you. We will now go to the students' presentation. Now the students' presentation, it will be two judges will be assessing and ranking the students' presentation, Dr. Helena Lugova and also Professor Dr. Tengi Moung. So Professor Dr. Helena Lugova, I just introduced to her and you listen to her. And she's from the National Defense University of Malaysia. And Professor Moung is from AIMS University, also in Malaysia. And these two eminent professors will be judging the presentation, oral presentation of 3 students. So let me first call the first paper presenter. The first paper will be on underreporting of body weight in urban poor community with obesity, possible role of socio-demographic and psychological factors. So this will be presented by, it will be a dual presentation. It will be presented by 2 students, Miss Vinashini Kalayarasu and also Miss Tanisha Gnanasekaran. So these 2 will be presenting this paper. Without further ado, I invite these presenters to present their paper.
I think the audio is not.
Good day, everyone. So before we start, I would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Vinashini. My colleague there is Tanisha, and we also have Alejandra and Pravina. So today we would like to present our research entitled Underreporting of Body Weight by an Urban Poor Community with Obesity, Possible Role of Socio-Demographic and Psychological Factors. We will be covering 5 sections in our presentation today. First, the introduction, the literature review, methodology, results, and finally, our conclusions and recommendations. But first, let me define some terms that we will be using throughout our presentation today. The World Health Organization, or the WHO, defines overweight and obesity as an abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that impairs health. They define quality of life, or QOL, as a unique perspective on one's life goals, expectations, and concerns, which are influenced by our respective cultures and value systems. Globally, 39% of adults aged 18 and above were overweight, whereas 13% were obese in the year 2016. Malaysia leads by being the most obese country in Southeast Asia with a prevalence of 15.4%. Out of this, the National Health and Morbidity Survey in 2019 found that 1 in 2 Malaysians are either overweight or obese, with 30.4% being overweight and 19.7% being obese. They also found that 33.2% of adults from the B40 group were obese. So as we all know, obesity is a major public health burden due to its link to the development of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, ischemic heart disease, and certain types of cancer. Studies suggest that obesity leads to poorer health outcomes and that Malaysia suffers from the double burden of having a high prevalence of obesity within underprivileged communities with lower quality of life. Emerging telemedicine practices and existing reports on the prevalence of obesity often rely on self-reported anthropometric measurements. However, possible underreporting of weight questions the reliability of these practices and the data collected via self-administered questionnaires. So this led us to want to find answers to 3 questions. First, what is the prevalence of obesity in an urban poor community in Malaysia, and what are the factors associated with it? Next, what is the frequency of underreporting of weight in self-administered online questionnaires? And finally, what are the possible roles of socio-demographic and psychological factors in the underreporting of weight? Naturally, our first objective was to determine the prevalence of obesity among an urban poor population. Next was to determine the association between socio-demographic factors, QOL, and obesity, and finally to assess the accuracy of self-reported weight and identify factors associated with reporting accuracy. We hope that by studying the prevalence, we are able to identify at-risk groups and propose more targeted approaches to improve health outcomes in this community. And we hope that by studying the factors associated, we are able to identify predictors for development of overweight and obesity. Now, let's look at some of the literature we found useful in our study. Yi et al. Found in 2016 that overweight and obesity doubles to a peak in middle-aged individuals. They also found that more women are obese than men. Indians are more overweight than Chinese and Bumiputras, and those with tertiary levels of education have the lowest prevalence. They also found that married people had higher risk of obesity. However, they did not present data regarding the B40 community explicitly, and they only used data collected from self-reported weight measurements. Galvin et al. Found in 2020 that among the 341 participants from an urban poor community, 39.6% were obese. They had no self-reported measurements to compare and therefore did not discuss underreporting. In 2018, Mauricio et al. Found that morbidly obese individuals presented with worse quality of life compared to non-obese individuals. This was an international review done in Brazil, and they did not use the WHO QOL graph questionnaire that we used in our study. And they also had different cutoff values for their classification of BMI and had no discussion regarding self-reported measurements. King et al. Found in 2018 that lower social desirability scores were associated with a greater degree of underreporting body weight. This was also not a local study because it was done in the USA, and they had a small sample size of 53 participants who were college students. In 2006, Yanapulia et al. Found that women were 9 times more likely to be underreported than men, and that a 10-year increase in age was associated with a 48% likelihood of being underreported. This was an international study done in Greece. The study included participants from urban and rural areas. Obesity has been associated with socio-demographic factors, but its association with quality of life is yet to be fully explored, especially in the low-income population of Malaysia. The accuracy of self-reported anthropometric measurements, especially weight, and its association with obesity has also not been well established. So how did we collect our data? We started with approximately 3,500 residents of PPR3 Pantai, and we included residents aged 18 and above who had handphones. We then contacted Taylor's Community Department, who contacted community leaders of PPR3 Pantai to disseminate the questionnaire to floor leaders and subsequently to residents. A total of 107 participants completed our online survey. However, only 64 participants were available for on-site measurement of height and weight. This made our total study population consisting of 64 participants. So what we did to measure height was that we marked a straight wall with 1 cm intervals using a measuring tape. We then asked participants to remove footwear and stand against this wall to measure their height. For weight, we used a digital body composition monitor to weigh them without footwear and accessories. We took measurements only when a constant reading was displayed on the scale. We assessed quality of life using the WHO QOL graph questionnaire, which consists of 4 domains: the psychological, physical, social, and environmental domains. So body mass index, or BMI, is an index of weight for height that is commonly used to classify overweight and obesity in adults. BMI was calculated by dividing weight in kilograms by height in meters squared. We used Malaysian BMI cutoff points. However, in our study, we combined overweight and pre-obese into 1 overweight category and the 3 obese classes into 1 obese category.
Next, we move on to results. Before we begin, let's look at the socio-demographics of our participants. The majority of our participants were 40 to 49 years old, female, Bhumiputra, had a secondary level of education, and are married. The distribution of BMI among adults according to BMI classification were 31.3% for overweight and 54.7% for obese, making it 86% who are either overweight or obese. When we studied the association between socio-demographic factors and BMI categories, we found no significant association between the tested socio-demographic variables and the BMI categories. Then we looked into the correlation between quality of life and BMI, and we found that the psychological domain of quality of life was negatively correlated to BMI by the R value of -0.359 and a significance of 0.004. Therefore, higher BMI is associated with poor psychological well-being. When we compared the difference between self-reported and measured weight, we found that there was a statistically significant mean difference by the p-value of 0.002. Participants were underreporting their weight by an average of 5.7 kilograms. The percentage of participants who were underreporting their weight was 64.1%. Finally, we studied the factors associated with underreporting of weight. Significant association was found between underreporting of weight with age and ethnicity. Age group 40 to 49 and ethnicity Bhumiputra were more likely to underreport their weight. For marital status, there was almost 20% in difference between the two categories, but the p-value was more than 0.05. The p-value of 0.093 would possibly be accepted at 10% significance since the sample size was small. Underreporting of weight was also negatively correlated to quality of life in the psychological domain. We move on to conclusions and recommendations. First of all, in comparison to national overweight and obesity prevalence of 50.1%, the prevalence in the B40 community of PPR3 was markedly higher at 86%. As mentioned earlier, most of the participants, 86%, were either overweight or obese. A majority of participants, 64.1%, were underreporting their weight. This questions the reliability on existing data on obesity prevalence. Fisher et al. Found that obesity prevalence was being underestimated by 12.9% for men and 8.1% for women because of underreporting of weight. Participants were underreporting their weights by an average of 5.7 kilograms. This is supported by the study done by Lin et al., who found that obese women were underreporting their weights by at least 5 kilograms. Underreporting was also seen more in married Bhumiputras aged 40 to 49, which is similar to the Attica study that found that increasing age was associated with underreporting of weight. Finally, higher BMI and underreporting of weight were associated with lower scores in the psychological domain of quality of life. This highlights the role of psychological factors in the prevalence of obesity and underreporting of weight. To summarize, regardless of the socio-demographics, the prevalence of overweight and obesity among the residents of this urban poor community was significantly higher than the reported national prevalence. Participants with higher BMI and participants who underreported their weight exhibited poorer scores in the psychological domain of our assessment of quality of life. Before we end, let's look at some factors to consider. First of all, our limitation. Sample population was relatively small due to limitations in survey dissemination during movement control order. We also had a lack of equal representation of Indians and Chinese, leading to the possibility of undercoverage bias. We would like to recommend that large-scale exploratory studies are done to effectively establish trends on obesity, quality of life, and underreporting. We would also like to recommend the development of well-rounded policies to deter the pervasiveness of obesity in this community. These are our references. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wholeheartedly thank Ms. Vinashini Kalayarasu and Tanisha Nganasekaran for their excellent preparation. I was really wondering why these researchers have selected urban poor community why not urban rich community? Maybe later on they will select. Now, before moving on, actually with the question and answer session will be open now, and those who want to ask questions, they can send the questions now by the QR code. And meanwhile, while waiting for those questions, let me engage our judges to ask the presenters whatever they want to ask, cross-check everything. Maybe Prof. Dr. Halina Lugova and Prof. Tingi Mawung can pose some questions to the presenters.
Prof. Karim, my question is now displayed on the screen, basically.
Very good.
That's my question. Thank you.
So what was the sampling method used, and what were the limitations of this method? Can the presenter answer this question posed by the judge?
So we did a cross-sectional study, and the limitations were because we could only acquire residents from a particular block in the PPR. So we find that our sample size could have been made larger if we expanded our expanded our region, including maybe other PPR residencies or other blocks in the same PPR residence. So that was one of the limitations that we found within our sample population.
Thank you, Vinashini. Vinashini, did you use probability or non-probability sampling method?
Sorry, Tanisha, do you want to help me with that?
It's all right. Not to worry, don't be stressed.
We used a probability method.
Thank you, Vinashini.
Yeah.
Prof. Mawung?
Yes, Prof. It's a very impressive presentation. I have two questions I like to ask to the students. So in this studies, your key measurements is based on the height and weight. So to avoid the measurement error, did you standardize something related to those measurements?
Yes, we did. In terms of the height measurement, we made sure that we measured when the participants were standing upright against the vertical wall, and we made sure that that was a parallel line from the neck right up to the occiput of the participants. So we made sure that the participants' posture was in the right place. We made sure that they were not wearing their shoes, and we also made sure that the wall was suitably, we would say possibly 100% vertical, so that we remove any kind of errors. In terms of weight, we use the Omron weighing scale, which is also digital. And the same weighing scale was used for all participants with the same restrictions of removing shoes or bags or whatever accessories that they had, so that we get as accurate as possible.
Perfect. Thank you. I have another question. Your study design is cross-sectional studies. So is there any time gap after you have disseminated your questionnaires? You went there for on-site measurements, right? So what is the time gap in between this questionnaire circulation and then measurement?
Approximately 2 weeks. We gave the participants 2 weeks time to answer, and then at the end of the second week, we were at the PPR to measure.
Okay, very good. Because our weight can be changed even in 1 week and another week, right? That's why I want to check, is there any long gap or short time? So it's very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, judges. We will be waiting for some more questions. While waiting for some more questions, it struck to my mind, I had been to Japan and lived there for a few months. I found that they have got a strong preoccupation of thinness, and they keep the body, majority of the people, very lean, and they are very hygienic as well. But they have also underreporting. So while you are making the literature review, have you come across what could be the reason for these countries to have this underreporting of their obesity?
So the perception of body image is actually related to the psychological component of quality of life. So the perception of body image will decide what is the kind of reporting of weight that we get. So in our study, we wanted to highlight that the underreporting was more prevalent amongst the obese individuals compared to the lean individuals. So if you did go through our study, you would find that there was underreporting among the lean individuals as well. But then it was significantly higher amongst the obese individuals. So we would like to propose that the perception of body image is more negative amongst the obese individuals.
Well done. But in that case, I want to put another question related to this, because when you say that it is more common with obese people, do you think that the social desirability score is very low in them? And you were talking about that social desirability. Did you have separate scoring?
We did not have separate social desirability scores. We used the questionnaire from the WHOQL-BREF, which had the psychological component, and they assessed more on the negative body image and appearance factors. If there was nothing pertaining to social desirability scores, Prof. Karim, that was your question.
Okay.
But the psychological domain does include evaluation of body image, appearance, either negative or positive feelings, and also perception on self-esteem. So I think it would encompass the social desirability, not necessarily in terms of scoring, but subjectively, yes.
Okay, that's fine. How many of your sample who have reported falsely? I think the obese people, they have reported their weight less than what really is.
64.1% of our sample population underreported their weight, and this was by more than 1.5 kilograms.
When you were confronting with them, what was the reply? What was the answer they gave to you?
Some of them seemed surprised that when we measured their weight, it was different to what they had imagined. So we can't ascertain whether or not they had purposely underreported, or it was an error in terms of their weighing scale versus ours.
Very nice. Okay, any more questions from the audience, from the judges?
No problem.
No problem.
Okay, so if there is no more question, I profoundly thank the judges for having given their time in assessing and ranking these presenters. And I heartfully thank the presenters. They have prepared very well, and they have presented it nicely, and they have faced the question and answer session also effectively. Thank you all very much. We will move on to the second presenter. Now for the second paper, Associate Professor Dr. Karthan Sinha and Associate Prof. Dr. Halina Lugova will be the judges for this presentation. And the second presentation is going to be on prevalence and predictors of happiness among the residents of PPR Seri Pantai. So this will be the second presentation by another student, Mr. Arvind Raj. He's also from Taylor's University. So without further ado, I invite Mr. Arvind Raj to present his research. Mr. Arvind Raj, please take over.
Before we go on to that next presentation, let's have a look at the raffle round by Dr. Joanne.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Hi, hello, good afternoon. Do you hear me now?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, yeah. Finally. Can I call also Dr. Sapna to help me out in the raffle?
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Joanne. Hello, everyone. We are back.
Just for an ice break.
I can see we are 61 people in this group, right? So we can have one prize selected by our volunteer.
Yeah. So we open the floor for any volunteer to help us with the raffle.
It is opened only to channel 1, is it?
Yeah, this time only to channel 1. Then we go to another channel after this.
So the chairman, co-chairman, judges are not allowed to be volunteers?
They're allowed to appoint the volunteer.
You may choose the volunteer, Prof. Karim. Anyone would like to volunteer?
If not, then we'll get some involunteer volunteer. We'll appoint someone.
Who wants to be?
Is Ahmad Hakimi Tajuddin here?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you turn on your video?
Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Oh, the network bandwidth is low.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Ahmad.
Yeah, good afternoon to you.
Can you introduce yourself? Where are you from? Are you from Malaysia?
Yeah, I'm from Malaysia. I'm a lecturer from Tele University, but I'm not from the School of Medicine. I'm from the finance.
Can you imagine?
Finance and accountancy.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. All right. Could you please help us to choose our raffle winner? So maybe what you can do, you just choose random number from 1 to 811.
1 to 100.
811. Now 813.
Wow, 800.
Yeah, 813, right?
Okay. All right. I choose which number? 105.
All right, 105. All right. Let me check.
Me.
Now we're there. 105. Who's this? Asil Hisham, postgraduate Taylor's University. Asil Hisham, are you here? Okay, now that's good news for you, Ahmad. So you will get that 100 ringgit worth of Unilever products. I'll pass it to you at Taylor's.
Thank you.
Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Can we just have a photo? Yeah. Can you please just say MEGOPIC?
Sure. No problem.
1, 2, 3, MEGOPIC.
I didn't make up yet.
No makeup. All right, MEGOPIC. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you so much. Back to you, Dr. Anita, Prof. Karim. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'll be presenting on our research today, which is titled Prevalence and Predictors of Happiness Among the Residents of PPR Seri Pantai. Now, moving on to introduction, we define happiness as the state of pleasurable contentment of mind or the contentment of one's circumstances, which means that an individual's happiness is based on their perception and outlook in life, which will vary from one person to the next. The overall consensus from multiple past studies is that the level of happiness correlates with the economic opportunities and the average household income, which tends to lag among the individuals of the B40 community. Now, the previous studies were focused on individuals from different demographics, for example, the general Malaysian population instead of the low-income population. Hence, those results might not be applicable to the lower-income B40 population. Also, this study tries to explore the happiness levels among the PPR population during the COVID-19 and the B40 community. PPR Seri Pantai is a housing project that is located in Lembah Pantai, Kuala Lumpur. And this housing project was established by the government specifically for the low-income individuals. The B40 community individuals are classified as those who earn a monthly household income of less than 4,850 ringgit. And the low-income community, such as the B40 community, are disproportionately affected by this pandemic. Hence, they are subject to immense financial and mental pressure, which will result to them becoming more unhappy. After researching the previous studies, we identified a few problems with the previous studies. One thing is, there has been a lack of studies done to assess the prevalence of happiness in the low-income communities. And there was also a lack of data available on the predictors of COVID-19 pandemic, which means that most of the data that we had from previous studies were from the pre-pandemic era. And finally, there were no prior studies done to study the association between happiness with the quality of life and mental health in low-income communities. To close this research gaps, we have come up with 4 research objectives. First is to determine the prevalence of happiness in PPR Seri Pantai population. Next is to determine the socio-demographic factors associated with happiness in the PPR Seri Pantai population. Then to determine the association between quality of life and happiness, and finally to determine the association between mental health and happiness. Moving on to the methodology, our study population was done with a cross-sectional study using a non-probability sampling, specifically convenience sampling. And our inclusion criteria was anyone who lived in or more. And our exclusion criteria was whoever are cognitively impaired. It was done in an online survey form, and all participants were voluntary participants. We had 3 instruments for this, 4 instruments for this study, which was the Rana Happiness Index (RHI) and Oxford Happiness Questionnaire, which was used to gain data on happiness. Then we used the World Health Organization Quality of Life Brief Version Questionnaire to gain data on quality of life. And finally, the Depression, Anxiety, Stress Scale 21 or the DAS 21 to obtain information on their mental health status. As for the analysis, we analyzed the demographics using descriptive statistics, the RHI and OHQ using Spearman's correlation, prevalence of happiness using descriptive statistics, happiness and RHI and OHQ correlation, and finally happiness and mental health using the participants in the study are anonymous, and we have obtained their informed consent. And this study was reviewed and approved by the Taylor's University Human Ethics Committee. Moving on to the results, after we obtained the questionnaire, we found there were a total of 180 respondents, in which majority were females, with females almost 5 times the number of males. And most of the age group consists of older adults with a mean age of 42. Most of the individuals were below, their highest education was below tertiary level of education. And as for ethnicity, most of the participants in the study are Malays, with the remaining participants being Indians, and there were no Chinese participants in our study. Okay, then we did the test of normality. If you can see the the histogram on the left score. Now the RHI score is positively skewed, while the OHQ score was negatively skewed. And the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test shows that RHI is significant. Hence, the data was not normally distributed, while the Oxford score was not significant. Hence, the data is normally distributed. And we also did a correlation test between Spearman's correlation coefficient between RHI and OHQ, and we found that they are statistically significant. And the correlation between RHI and OHQ was near 0.5, which means that it indicates a moderate positive correlation between the two scores. As for the prevalence of happiness, we found that using the RHI, majority of the populations is unhappy with a score of 51.7%, while using the OH 57.2. As for predictors of happiness, we did a chi-square test between RHI and demographics, and we found that younger adults, Indians, single people, and people with tertiary level of education are more likely to be unhappy. And we did the same chi-square test using the RHQ, and we obtained similar results. We also did a Spearman and Pearson's correlation test using this questionnaires, where RHI we did a Spearman's correlation test because the data was positively skewed, and while the OHQ we did a Pearson's correlation test. And we found that all four domains of quality of life are significantly and positively correlated with both the RHI and OHQ questionnaires. We also did identify the association between happiness and mental health, anxiety and depression. And we identified that people who are stressed, anxious or depressed are more likely to be unhappy compared to those who are not. And using the OHQ, we also obtained a similar result. Moving on to the discussion, we identified for the prevalence of happiness that there were almost equal number of people who are happy and unhappy. And this data shows that prevalence is much lower compared to previous studies. For example, the study done by Bu et al., Chia and Tang, Lee and Lai, their data obtained more than 90% of happy individuals. And this can be explained due to the fact that they had different study population. Their studies were of general Malaysian population or people from other states such as Penang, while our population consists of people who are of low income category, so that might explain the discrepancy. Found the significant relationship between income and happiness. Hence, since the population of PPR Pantai are of lower income, hence we can expect lower level of happiness in the results. And also, our study is conducted in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic. So we postulate that due to this lockdown, there would be a significant drop in happiness level, not only the PPR residents, but in the Malaysian population in general. Moving on to the happiness and demographics, we found a significant relationship between ethnicity and happiness, where we found that Malays were much happier than Indians. However, this result could be explained due to the fact that we had an unequal sample size, where the Malay population far outweighs the Indian population, and there were lack of Chinese participants. Also, in 2013, a study by Chia and Tang, they found a significant relationship between ethnicity and happiness, where they identified that the Chinese population are less likely to be happy compared to. We cannot refute or support Chia and Tang's findings. As for age, majority of our participants were of older adults. We comprised 76% of the population. Hence, we postulate that older adults are happier because they spend less time on stressful events and more time on emotionally lifting ones, such as spending time with family. And Bell also found that older adults are better at avoiding situations or people who makes them feel bad and positive on the positive images and situation. Hence, that might explain why older adults are happier. And also, older adults tend to be more established in life and financially secure compared to the younger adults. As for the younger adults, especially when talking about the recent graduates, in the COVID-19 pandemic era, there seem to be lesser job opportunities. Hence, the recent graduates are pressured to find job because they are unable to work, more unhappy. Association between happiness and demographics found there is a significant association with marital status and happiness. Similar to previous studies, we found that married people are much happier than those who are single. One possible explanation is that single people are more lonely, hence they don't have any partners to share their burden, which may explain their lower happiness level compared to the married individuals. And for education level, we found there was a significant association with happiness. However, unlike previous studies, for example by Zaremozabia and Chia and Tang, we found a negative correlation in which those with lower level of education were happier than those with higher. This could be due to the fact that those with higher education are more aware of the inequalities and injustice that contributes to their present situation. When talking about the association between happiness and quality of life, QOL and happiness are positively and significantly for domain, similar to previous studies by Abul Qasim et al., Ismail et al., and so on. And we found that the physical domain has the weakest correlation to happiness, which was also demonstrated in prior studies. However, this differs when using RHI as an indicator for happiness, where instead of physical domain, psychological and social aspects of the QOL are more significant. And this is supported by prior studies by Abul Qasim and Mevdev and Ledouis. As for association between mental health and happiness, similar to previous studies, we found that those with mental health issues are unhappier than those without. This could be explained because mental health has a strong influence on an individual's happiness and life satisfaction, since their mental status greatly affects their perception of events and interactions they experience. Hence, people with worse mental status might react badly to unfortunate events, has mental health issues to a certain degree. The World Health Happiness Reports describe that eliminating mental health can be more effective than giving monetary aids in raising happiness levels. Thus, we concur with Clark et al., saying that solving mental health issues will have a significant increase in happiness level of more than half of the specific PPR population. So as for conclusion, we found that prevalence of happiness in PPR Seri Pantai is lower compared to the general population of Malaysia. Ethnicity, age, marital status, and education level has a significant association with happiness, whereas gender and employment did not. And happiness is found to be associated with both quality of life and mental health. There were a few limitations to our study. First of all, as mentioned before, there is no Chinese participant in this study, and there were also lack of Indian participants. This is a cross-sectional study, hence we cannot establish a causal relationship. And there might be sampling bias here. Physically, due to the movement control order. As for future studies, we recommend that they include a larger population of study and preferably contain each of the major ethnic groups in Malaysia. More studies should also focus on studying happiness and its predictors in the low-income community, particularly in the context of COVID-19, and there is lack study of them. And finally, future studies may explore the relationship between demographics, quality of life, and mental health with happiness, also establishing a causal relationship among them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arvind Raj, for your excellent presentation. Now, I will request Associate Prof. Karatan Chinna and Associate Prof. Dr. Helena Lugova to pose important questions regarding the presentation while we are waiting for further questions from the audience.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Yeah, one question regarding the RANA. Has it been validated in Malaysia yet? The RANA questionnaire?
It has not been validated in Malaysia.
Has been validated?
It has not yet been validated.
All right. So which is more reliable between the two questionnaires?
The Oxford Health question, the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire. Oxford.
Right. So I think more conclusion must be based on Oxford rather than RANA. You agree?
Can I add a word to it? So the significance of why we are using the RANA is basically because Oxford itself is a very well-established questionnaire. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to study the RANA Happiness Index. And then we need it to compare with a very well-established questionnaire, which would be the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire.
Or just checking the equivalence of RANA to Oxford, right?
Yeah, see how much they agree to each other.
Oh, all right. That's all my side.
Thank you.
I have one question to you guys. This is just, it's a bit, you might find it a difficult question, but don't worry, I will accept any answer as long as you demonstrate critical thinking, okay? So in your study, when talking about the relationship between mental health and happiness, you assume that it's that way. The direction is that the problems with mental health can cause unhappiness. What about the other way around? Do you think it's valid to assume that people who are unhappy for some other reason, not related to mental health, they might develop gradually problems with their mental health? And if yes, if you assume that it can happen, so the relationship can be the other way around, how this fact affected actually the results of your study when you presented the results and you chose your happiness level as dependent variable and your mental health problems as independent? So if it's the other way around, what about the results of your study, the validity of the results? Thank you.
I think it's always mental health which affects happiness. Meaning that if there's stress, anxiety, and depression, that would have affected happiness.
That's it. Thank you.
Prof, yeah, we also postulate that it can happen the other way around. Like, for example, people who are less happy, for example, people with low happiness level, they might, it's just postulation at this point, but they might isolate themselves or, for example, cut off social context, and this can lead to more prominent mental health problems such as depression, anxiety, and so on. So we agree that it might be codependent with each other, but we can't say for sure because this is just a postulation at this point. So more study might need to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
I feel basically the sample size is very small. With a big sample size, be very useful. This kind of study is very important to the community. So with a bigger sample size, hopefully somebody takes on from here to make more conclusive findings. Thank you.
There's also another question here, which is the highest prevalence among depression, anxiety, and stress in this study? And based on the study, the highest prevalence is stress and the lowest prevalence is anxiety.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, judges, for your very important questions. And I like that first question from Prof. Karatan Chinna, because validated questionnaire must be used for the research studies. But the explanation given by the presenter is also valid. because you want to compare with unvalidated questionnaire with a validated and sound questionnaire. So that answer is also very fitting. Okay, meanwhile, while we are waiting for further questions from the audience, I know that that area where you have made the study, they have got some unhealthy habits and unhygienic practices. This is what I learned from that area. And also recently or many times, police personnel and officers are also posted there to control these people's behavior. Do you come across in your study these sort of reasons why people are unhappy beyond the usual reasons which you work out? Have you come across these unusual reasons?
Well, Prof, based on our past studies that we have went through, if you see unusual studies, we could not find a lot on this case because when you talk about the context of P40 population specifically in Malaysia, or when you talk in context of low-income population, the studies tend to address their income as a factor. So many studies conclude that people with lower income tend to have lower level of happiness, but we can't really say, or we couldn't really find any studies that specifically point out any unusual reasons or points or causes as to why they are unhappy, or they might have a specific specific cause for their behavior or unhappiness. Because
well, let me put that question bluntly. Have you come across as one of the reason for unhappiness, crime rate?
Sorry?
Crime rate.
Or crime rate. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, our study only studies demographics, mental health, and basically mental health and also quality of life with happiness. So we didn't explore about crime rates and all.
Oh, the behavioral attitude you didn't explore.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Any more question, please?
Okay, Prof. Karim and
yeah,
Arvind, I have a question.
Okay,
Dr. Subhash here.
Please.
So when you collect the data, so like for example, in patients with depression. So when you pass the questionnaire, or when you interview them, so if they are under depression, how reliable is going to be their response? Do you think they are in a position to respond appropriately to your questions?
Well, Dr. Bish, we can't really diagnose them with depression because we need an actual psychiatric clinician to evaluate them. But based on our questionnaire, we set the questions based on a specific questions that address these specific categories. For example, there are specific questions to address anxiety, specific to address depression, and so on. So there are if you talk about depression alone, there are multiple questions under depression. For example, this question might ask how often in a week do you feel sad, and how often do you feel will to take your life and such like that. So there'll be a certain number of scale from most likely to least likely, and based on that we will tabulate scores so we can get a rough estimate of who might have depression and who might not. The keyword here is might. So based on that we can say this person might have depression or might not. But as for definitively saying that they have depression or not, we can't do that unless we give them a psychiatric or psychological evaluation.
Doctor, just to add into that a little bit. So basically our questionnaire, it reflects certain areas of depression, but it's not exactly accurate enough to diagnose someone as clinically depressed. So yeah, but it actually reflects certain aspects of depression in which That's and also another thing is in our exclusion criteria, our exclusion criteria is those who are cognitively impaired. So if we assume that those who are like at least functional enough to actually read the WhatsApp messages and understand and also to answer them, then we assume they are sort of like stable enough to participate in our study.
I understand, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Subhash. Your question prompted me to ask one more sub-question to the presenter. I found two interesting facts, so I listened to your presentation. One is female are 5 times more ready to report, and they have answered, they were responding you 5 times more than the male. This is one interesting finding. And another one, those who have studied up to the tertiary level, they were more, I think, unhappy. So can you explain these two facts and why the gents are already depressed or unhappy, and that's why they didn't respond, or how do you feel?
I think it's generally the study population. Like we just managed to approach like this group of people. I don't think it exactly reflects like the PVR Sri Pantai is mostly female, but this is somehow just the group that we approach.
Yeah.
And then
not only in your study, I found in some other studies also, female are more ready to respond rather than male, especially in a closed community like this. I don't know why.
And also the other question is educational level, was it?
Yeah.
So there are actually several theories on it. One is basically those who are highly educated, they actually understand that what circumstances have led them to such inequality, and hence they become less happy. And also the other, that's the main reason actually. So the other, I think, that's the main reason for it. I mean, I think we wrote it in our slides. And the other is like those who are highly educated, they are postulated to hold much higher positions, such as like the CEOs and all that. So these jobs are generally more stressful as compared to like those who are lowly educated. They usually take up like labor work and all that. So these are less stressful, and hence they're much happy.
Okay. Well then, is there any more question?
Prof, can I ask one question, please?
Please go ahead.
So I'm just wondering about DAS 21. Actually, it is strongly validated questionnaires for screening. One thing I'm curious is when you ask the respondents related to stress, anxiety, and depression, our mood is always changing, right? Today and tomorrow also not the same. So did you fix certain time interval to reflect their feeling? Is it related to last 1 month experience or yesterday experience? What did you do? Did you standardize the duration of their feeling?
Very important question. This one is yes.
I think we were assessing at that particular time.
No, the questionnaire itself asks you in the last, I can't remember, 7 days or 30 days, in the last. It's not that particular time. Check the questionnaire, okay? In the last, I don't know whether 1 week or 1 month. All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because DAS 21 is, if I'm not mistaken, it is reflecting last 2 weeks experience.
2 weeks, okay.
It is
all right. It's not on the spot kind of thing.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, this study has been done online and no face-to-face interaction or whatever. So we can't make in-depth findings and evidence. Sure. But this is a starting point. More need to be studied in this group of people. With a bigger sample size, maybe samples be drawn more like randomly. So it'll be more representation. Yes, exactly. So as this is a more female than male, the results can be a bit skewed. All right. Anyway, it's a good attempt.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Prof. Kartan. If there is no more question, Let me thank profoundly to Dr. Associate Prof. Dr. Karatan Chinna, as well as Associate Prof. Dr. Helena Lugova for the precious time being spent here with the students' presentation. Thank you very much, judges. And I also sincerely and immensely thank the presenters for their excellent preparation of their research work. And also they boldly face many questions posed by us. Thank you very much. Let us move on to presentation number 3. Yes, presentation number 3 is going to be done by a student from Pradana University, Miss Shwati Tamilmani, and she's going to present on characterizing body image, body appreciation, and body esteem among urban children in Malaysia. So this is a very interesting topic, and I think after presentation, we have to have a very good discussion on this. Okay, let me call Miss Shwati. Miss Shwati, it's yours.
Everyone, my name is Shwati Tamalmani. I'm a third-year medical student from Pradana University RCSI School of Medicine. Today, I will be presenting on an important but neglected topic in public health. The research topic I'll be presenting on today is titled Characterizing Body Image, Body Appreciation, and Body Esteem Among Urban Children in Malaysia. Before going in depth into this research topic, let me introduce the definitions of some very important terms we evaluated in this research. Perception of body weight is defined as how one evaluates his or her body image with their feelings, behaviors, and thoughts regarding weight and physical appearance. Body image is defined as a person's perception of their physical self and how one recognizes, feels, thinks, and acts towards his or her body. It is not a permanent personal characteristic, instead a dynamic aspect of oneself that varies over time. Body appreciation is defined as accepting, having appropriate views or beliefs towards and respecting or appreciating one's body, as well as combating the social and cultural compulsion to incorporate the standardized beauty norm into one's life. Body esteem is defined as a self-concept that has been most consistently associated with weight and includes the attitudes, evaluations, and feelings an individual holds about his or her body. Is widely discussed in literature. However, in Malaysia, this is the first research that has studied body image among children using the Children's Body Image Scale (CBIS). Childhood obesity is believed to cause negative impacts on a child's body image, body appreciation, self-esteem, dieting behavior, emotional and social well-being, and it also affects their academic performances. Although the health risks of obesity in children are poorly established, obesity in childhood predisposes an individual to obesity in adulthood and poses significant health risks. This is why accurate perception of body weight status is vital, as it is strongly associated with increased risk of obesity and unhealthy weight controlling behaviors. Previous researchers have said that low body esteem has a major impact, especially on females, due to the unrealistic beauty standards created by the society in order for a female to perceive herself as beautiful. A few studies have showed that obese and overweight children had lower self-esteem when compared to normal weight children. Overweight children were also described as more depressed, insecure, and incompetent. Their unhappiness was believed to be related to poor self-confidence and low body esteem. This, in return, may result in change of eating habits, which may eventually lead to the development of eating disorders such as bulimia and anorexia. Unhealthy dieting behavior among children is also an important issue that must be addressed to curb health issues such as diabetes mellitus and cardiovascular diseases. To date, there are very few researchers that have examined body appreciation among children. Clinicians usually use the body appreciation scale for clients with body image dissatisfaction and eating disorders as a base to instill body appreciation in them. This is because body appreciation tends to focus more on the internal perspectives such as love, respect, and acceptance of the body, and nearly nil on the external characteristics. Now let's have have a look at the objectives of this research. This research aims to determine the children's perception of their body weight status, to elucidate the association between children's body weight with body appreciation and body esteem, to examine the gender differences in body esteem and body appreciation, and lastly, to evaluate the effect of body esteem and body appreciation score on dieting behavior. Now, let's move on to the methodology part of this research. Firstly, data was collected using interview-style questionnaires from primary school children aged from 7 to 12 years in Selangor, Malaysia. Prior to conducting the study, approval from the University Institutional Review Board of Perdana University and the Ministry of Education and School Administration was acquired. The consent form, along with the information about the study and approval of ministry, were distributed to the students to obtain the parents' consent. Only the students that written the signed consent forms were allowed to participate in the study. The sample size of this research is 333 students, with 141 boys and 192 girls. The participants are from a primary school in Malaysia, aged between 7 to 12 years. We obtained responses from Malay, Tamil, and Chinese school students to have participants of various ethnics. Demographic data was collected that included birth date, gender, and ethnicity. Children were interviewed on a one-to-one basis by trained assessors. The children's perceived body weight and ideal body image was determined using the Children's Body Image Scale, CBIS, which is a pictorial scale with 7 photographic figures of children ranging from very thin to obese. Then, the child's BMI was calculated from obtaining the height and weight of the children in school uniform without their shoes, and they were categorized according to the actual BMI category on the CBIS. Body appreciation status was determined using the Body Appreciation Scale questionnaire. All the items were rated on a 5-point scale, with never as 1, rarely as 2, sometimes as 3, often as 4, and always as 5, with higher scores reflecting higher body appreciation. The first 2-point scale, never and rarely, were computed as being low, and the other 3 were computed to be high body appreciation. This part of the questionnaire consisted of 10 questions, such as, I feel good about my body, I respect my body, and etc., with 5 answer options as mentioned above. The body esteem was measured using the Body Esteem Scale, BES, for children. This scale consisted of 20 questions, and the children had to rate these 20 questions using a 5-point Likert scale, ranging from strongly disagree, scored as 1, to strongly agree, which is scored as 5. This part of the questionnaire consisted of questions such as, I'm pretty happy about the way I look. I often wished I looked like someone else. I like what I see when I look in the mirror, and so on. Accuracy in body weight perception was determined in comparison with the measured BMI. Chi-square test was used to determine the association between body esteem and body appreciation with gender, dieting behaviors, and body weight status. In this slide here, the Children's Body Image Scale is attached. For figure 1, the CBIS for girls, and figure 2, the CBIS for boys. To evaluate the perception of body weight status among children, each child was asked to select a CBIS figure that they believe to be of a similar size to them. This is the perceived body weight, and they were also asked to select a CBIS figure that they would want to have, which is the ideal body image of the children. The pie charts represent the demographic characteristics of this research study. Moving on to the next part, which is the results of the study. Significant association was shown between the actual perceived score and gender. On average, the boys chose a CBIS category which is lower than their actual weight, with a discrepancy score of 0.4, and the boys were more inaccurate in perceiving their body weight compared to the girls. 15.6% of the boys and 13.5% of the girls underestimated their body weight, and 10.6% of the boys and 2.6% of the girls overestimated their weight. Significant association was seen between body esteem and BMI Z-score, where children with normal body weight showed higher body esteem. Significant association between body esteem and perceived body weight, as well with dieting behaviors, was also observed. There was also significant association between body esteem and body dissatisfaction. This study also demonstrated significant association between gender and the body esteem scale BES. This research shows that most children, which is 74% of the boys and 84% of the girls, accurately estimated their body weight. Body image dissatisfaction scores showed that children desire to be thinner, with boys less accurately perceiving their body weight compared to girls. Majority of the children, which is 98% of the sample size, showed to have high body appreciation, in which 68% of them were normal weight children. Majority of children, both boys and girls, with measured normal body weight status demonstrated to have high body esteem compared to other categories of the BMI. Among the children with high body esteem, 41% of them perceived themselves to be underweight and 50% of them perceived themselves to be of normal body weight. Based on this study, we conclude that most children accurately perceive their body weight and generally have a high body appreciation and high body esteem. Future studies should focus on the relative role of body appreciation and body esteem in understanding gradual variations in either dimensions of physical and psychological well-being of children. More studies should also focus on implementing specific interventions such as behavioral treatments and counseling sessions targeting girls and boys with low scores respectively to support and guide them in the right direction in the upcoming phases of their life. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swati. Ms. Swati, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I now request our judge, Dr. Rekha, to pose some important questions to you while we are waiting for the questions from the audience. Okay, Dr. Rekha, please go ahead.
Thanks, Prof. Karim. I would like to ask a question on the study design. It was mentioned that the question used were the interview questions, right? So how are the interview questions designed?
This study was conducted in 2019 from August to June. The questionnaire was adapted from a few other questionnaires that has already been validated. For body esteem scale, to measure body esteem, we used body esteem scale by Halliwell, and for body appreciation, we used the scale by Halliwell. Body esteem, we used the body esteem scale, and for CBIS, we used Truby and Paxton.
Okay, and what about the dieting behavior? How are the questions designed for that?
There were two questions asked regarding dieting behaviors. Firstly, are you currently dieting to lose weight? And another question, have you dieted before in the past year? And
so so this was not a validated questionnaire for dieting behavior, right?
Yes, these two questions were added.
So it is not a questionnaire as such. So these were questions which were added in the interview questions, right?
Only for dieting behaviors.
Only
yes.
for dieting behavior. Because one of your objective is to evaluate the effect of body esteem and appreciation score on dieting behavior. And the results did not show that learning objective. So I was worried what questionnaire was used for dieting behavior. So that's why I wanted to ask the question. And how many schools did you go and?
We went to 3 schools, one Tamil school, one Chinese school, and another an SK school, Malay school.
So all primary schools, and your total number of students were around 300 plus, right?
33, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Rekha, for your meticulously selected questions.
Thanks, Prof.
And it has been answered by the presenters. And I'm also impressed by the sample size. It's over 300. It's very good. Do you give any importance to the economical background? Did you see that these children are rich according to the Malaysian standard, or from poor families?
No, we did not look at the economic status of the children.
Because don't you think that it has also got some impact over the appreciation of the body image and perception of the body image in it? What do you think?
According to a few other studies that we read about, they mentioned that their results were contradicting to our study, in which they mentioned that the body appreciation and body esteem of children were influenced by ethnic race and also their family background. So I would agree. However, in our study here, we did not evaluate these factors.
Okay. Do you expect there will be significant difference of the results of your results if we compare similar study on the rural children?
We would not be anticipating a lot of difference. Because when we interviewed the children, we found that most of them, they were influenced by the actresses and the models, all the pressure from the society and the images that were ideal and they were which were portrayed on the social media. So all these factors, they influence the children's body image. So as of now, the social media has reached even the remote areas. So the influence of social media is also in the children living in rural areas. However, a thorough research would be needed to prove if this association is significant in them.
But interestingly, we are feeling so. But interestingly, what happened in Malaysia? They have done a study in 2009, I hope. In that study, they found out that there is no significant difference between urban and rural area, especially those female students, secondary school students. So these, I think this is in a funny note. What I mean is, girls, whether they are from rural area or from urban area, I think they are very much concerned about their body image.
Yes.
And also body weight. Do you agree with that?
Yes, because based on the studies, like other studies, not our research, this statement has been proved. But interestingly, in our study, majority of the students had very high body appreciation, which is 98% of our sample size. And body esteem, more children, boys and girls, they had more children who were underweight. They were more dissatisfied with their body compared to the rest of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any other question from the audience or from the judge, Dr. Rekha?
No, Prof. Karim.
Okay. Yes. So we are coming to the close of this session, and overall, it has been very well done by the main speaker, Prof. Halina, and also all the three presenters. They have done very well. I really appreciate all of them. And the credit goes to their supervisor also. It was very well done, and I really appreciate it from our side. And it is all the topics are also very, very important and concerned with the current situation here. Without further ado, we are exactly going by the time. Now, I will invite my co-chair, Dr. Subhash Patil, to start the next session. And the next session, he will be chairing the session, and he will be announcing all the details about the session. So I thank all the organizers for having given me the chance to chair this session. And I'm really pleased and privileged to be here with you all. Thank you very much. I invite Dr. Subhash. Please.
Thank you, Prof. Karim. And good afternoon, everyone, once again. So contrary to what Prof. Karim just now said, so we are running a bit late now by about 20 minutes or so. But anyway, to be fair to everyone, so we'll try to catch up with the lost time. So without further delay, so we'll move on to the next theme. That's going to be maternal and child health. And our main speaker for this session is Professor Dr. Pramila Kannan Kutty, who is a general pediatrician, but with a special interest in pediatric immunology. And she has done a lot of study on immunology related to breast milk. She is a fellow of Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, and a fellow of Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health in the United Kingdom. And she is also an alumni of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, where she did her master's thesis in 1989. And her topic was cancer of the uterine cervix, prospects of prevention by vaccination. So she's also an author of a textbook in pediatrics, and she also has contributed to numerous local and international papers, especially related to breast milk immunology. So let us welcome Prof. Pramila to start with the session without further delay. Thank you, Prof. Pramila, and welcome to your session.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. Thank you.
Talking about innate protective potential by breastfeeding in this pandemic. The information is based on work on the SARS-CoV-2 virus, as well as taking comparisons and making extrapolations from research on SARS-CoV. Now, that is logical because of the identical sequences between the two viruses. And after that, after collecting that information, I sort of integrated to the protective potential in human milk to see how and the many ways in which milk has the potential to protect in COVID-19. So why should I exclusively breastfeed my child, especially during this pandemic? Why can't I mix feed? Sometimes it is inconvenient for me to directly breastfeed, and I may not be able to express milk at that time. So can I not top up with some formula milk? Why should I continue breastfeeding for 6 months as advised by the World Health Organization? What is the importance of all this in this pandemic? The next few slides will show you how the virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, enters the body, causes disease, and how important it is to exclusively breastfeed our children to protect them against the disease as well as against the complications of the disease. So up to now, there's no evidence of mother-to-child transmission of SARS-CoV-2 through human milk, and both the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control encourage continued breastfeeding in this pandemic. If mother or child is too ill to feed, then expressed breast milk is encouraged. In fact, mothers who have had the disease then have produced specific antibodies in milk against the virus, and this may well be protective. The different rates of infection between children and adults have been very intriguing, and many factors have been proposed, such as receptor number in the children, such as children having some degree of cross-reactivity to other coronaviruses, or that their inflammation, their immunological milieu may be different, skewed towards anti-inflammation, or whether it is the fact that children have been either actively breastfed all over the world now in the pandemic, or have been breastfed before, whether these are the factors that could contribute to this difference. Nobody really knows. The solar corona, the projections are not visible in this diagram, but it is a spherical virus, a single-stranded RNA virus, which is enveloped of most importance with regards to infectivity is the spike glycoprotein on the outer surface of the virus, important in host cell attachment and fusion because it contains the receptor binding domain. It binds to the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor on the epithelial cells in the host. The disease has 3 stages. The first stage is mild. Most people experience this stage of disease, but are infected here. If the virus goes down to the lung, then they experience pneumonia with a spectrum of severity. Some of them have hypoxia, others don't. And then you have the third stage, which is rare but dangerous, associated with dysregulated immunity. Likewise, the symptoms can be divided according to the stage. You've got fever, dry cough, diarrhea, headaches, taste and smell disturbances in stage 1. Stage 2 may be associated with shortness of breath and hypoxia. And in the last stage, which is in stage 3, which is uncommon, this can be associated with acute respiratory distress syndromes, systemic inflammatory response syndromes, shock, and cardiac failure. So the coronavirus enters the mucous membranes, that early layer of defense, and then through receptors, through the ACE2 receptors, the spike protein attaches itself and the virus then enters the cell, in which case it would take over the host cell machinery, multiply, and this multiplication releases the infected particles, which are then seen by the innate system, which produces antiviral substances and hopefully clears the virus. For any reason at all, either host factors or viral factors, yet unexplained. This may not be successful, and the continued production of these antiviral factors may indeed not be useful, but may go on to produce tissue destruction. How important is innate immunity to the nursing child? We are all aware that there is adaptive immunity to SARS-CoV-2 because if a mother is exposed to the disease or has the disease, then she produces, if the mother has the disease, then she produces specific immunoglobulins, antibodies against the virus. That's adaptive immunity. But we're not talking about that now. We're talking about innate immunity, that regardless of exposure, all mothers can provide their children. This immunity occurs early, it's very timely, and this is very important because in this disease, time is everything. The later the disease goes on in the body, the greater the chance of tissue destruction. It is dynamic. Some mothers, it can differ a little bit from one mother to the other. It is continuous. Now, how important is that? It's very important because when it's continuous, it gives rise to a very important feature, and that you cannot mix feed. Because to obtain maximum benefit, you have to exclusively breastfeed because the protection is continuously provided with every cycle, you see? So the importance of not mixed feeding. Broad-based and powerful, it doesn't recognize one organism. You're looking at groups of organisms, including the SARS-CoV-2. So there is protection against this one disease, but there's also a holistic sort of step up to health because it protects against various other conditions. And as you know, immunity as such, holistic health is so important in the defense against the virus. It's very powerful because on its own, it is able to add a layer of immunity, and it also can bridge from this early stage of immune responses to something more focused and exact in adaptive immunity, like the formation of useful antibodies against the virus. I would like to highlight and draw to your kind attention the holistic and powerful protection present within mother's milk in this disease. We often take it for granted, saying that breast milk is best, and we all know it. But to understand the systematic fashion in which nature provides protection that to hear in innate immunity, which is ready-made immunity that has no cost. The only cost is the mother's motivation to continue breastfeeding. I integrate the pathogenesis of the disease with the possible protection that breast milk can offer. And I show an area of beautiful overlap where it works both as a vaccine as well as therapy. I hope we can enjoy the next few slides in the details of this. I use this slide to show you, drawing from the work of others, the innate potential in milk and the dynamicity, the differences in colostrum, transitional and mature milk. You've got substances that strengthen the frontliners, the mucins and the glycoproteins and others. You've got substances that can recognize pathogens together with the, in a milieu with soluble receptors that can possibly modulate the recognition so that it's just enough but never too much. You've got cells in milk, the immune cells, and then we have the multi-lineage pluripotent stem cells that are capable of incorporating into the body of the breastfed child and help in repair and replenishment. Okay, you've got microbes in the breastfed child, which are different from from the children who are bottle fed, and these commensal microbes also help encourage an anti-inflammatory milieu. The gut is not spared from this disease, right? The gut has got the receptors as well. So commensals in the gut with the ramifications that it can possibly do to the human body really are very important, and this is controlled by substances in mother's milk. The anti-inflammatory substances, the cytokines, the growth factors, and the antioxidants are all well present in milk. So human milk can strengthen mucous membranes through the factors that I've mentioned, and this is nothing new because this is probably one of the reasons why children are protected from respiratory diseases and gastrointestinal diseases through breastfeeding. Infection blockade. Does milk have this power? Yes, it does. It has long been known that substances in breast milk can prevent viruses and bacteria from entering and infecting cells. Human milk oligosaccharides, secretory IgA, lactoferrin, these are substances that do it. And this is one of the important reasons why mothers must continue breastfeeding even when they experience an infection, because they are offering their children innate potential so that the innate immune factors in breast milk prevent the entry of these infections so that the child remains well when he or she is being breastfed. As far as SARS-CoV-2 is concerned, experimental evidence suggests that lactoferrin can block these ACE2 receptors through the interaction with the heparan sulfate proteoglycan receptors, which are actually the virus's anchoring sites. And by blocking that, it prevents the ACE2 receptor from being occupied. In vivo studies need to be done. This needs to be further explored, but the potential is well within the capacity of milk. Right, so the time has certainly come for viral recognition, and the breastfed child, the immune system in the breastfed child can do this, helped by milk, because milk has got toll-like receptors, which are pathogen recognition receptors, together with soluble receptors. So the recognition of the virus will trigger effective antiviral response through the innate potential in the child's immune system, as well as providing additional substances such as cytokines and chemokines and type 1 interferon, very important. And hopefully at this point, the virus is cleared. The breastfed child is also able to recruit cells to the site of infection, perhaps, adding to the efficiency of the system that is provided by milk and clearing the virus at this early stage. So is there any evidence that milk can actually tone down the immune responses? Well, we know about the allergies that are reduced in some cohorts of children who are breastfed compared to bottle fed. And we know how breastfeeding children can be protected to some extent against some autoimmune diseases, showing you long-term sort of immune modulation in milk. Selective vaccine responses are better in breastfed children compared to those who are not breastfed. So all this actually indicates that milk has this potential. And in this pandemic, we don't know. We need to, again, study this. But the pediatric inflammatory multisystem syndrome is certainly a worrying thing that is a complication in children who have suffered the disease. So this clearly indicates to us that something that is able to modulate inflammation in the short term as well as in the long term will be very useful. So I think we should use this as another important reason why all mothers must breastfeed in this pandemic. So one substance, myriad functions, lactoferrin in innate immunity tells it best. Early protection, which the child can obtain through skin-to-skin contact, preparing the mother in the antenatal clinic, and providing the child the immune-rich colostrum. Sustained feeding, so that the mother continues to exclusively breastfeed as recommended for 6 months, because the addition of any other substance may dilute or counter the multidimensional dynamic effect of innate immunity. That the mother must be motivated through holistic health so that she sustains feeding through bonding and confers to her child potentials of both primary prevention, acting as a vaccination through nutrition, as well as therapy through exclusive human milk. So all the best and good luck breastfeeding. The list of my references. Thank you very much. Hope you found this useful and enjoy bonding and breastfeeding.
Thank you, Prof. Pramila. That was a very informative talk.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Glad you found it so.
Yeah, exactly. And then, at least for me, this was totally, totally new subject. So I hadn't come across anything related to breastfeeding with COVID. This one is very informative.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Prof. Pramila, so would you mind taking some questions from
certainly.
the audience now?
Yeah, no problem.
So for everyone else, so you can scan the QR code and you can put in your questions. And anybody has direct access, they also can voice out their questions. Thank you.
Chairman, it's not a question, but it's an appreciation to Dr. Pramila, who has done a wonderful job in promoting the breastfeeding.
Thank you.
In fact, our ancestors very well knew breastfeeding was very good, and almost we know that all our ancestors are very particular in breastfeeding, and they actually felt that they are imparting a close kinship with the child by giving them breastfeeding. And religiously also, many religions, including Islam, promoted this breastfeeding, and Islam is it makes as a law to give breastfeeding for at least 2 years. So this is a dictum, unless and otherwise mother is ill or not allowed to feed. So without these exceptions, she is compelled to breastfeed for 2 years. So like this, the ancestors very well knew. But modern generation, because I'm sorry to say, I think many of us know, considering that the complexion and then beauty and other things, they want to retain their composition, and so they do not want to continue the breastfeeding. So if at all they are very keen and kind, they give for a few months and then they stop. What do you think, Prof? Do you think that this is there is something mothers have to be mentally prepared, and the breastfeeding must be actively promoted among mothers?
Yes, certainly. I think you brought out very valid points there. It is correct. I mean, some mothers may start breastfeeding, but to sustain it for, as Islam says, 2 years, but we say correctly 2 years. But after 6 months, you must add on weaning solid diets, because otherwise they can also become nutritionally deficient. But you are absolutely right. The longer you feed, the better the protection. The point is, I think I've looked at it this way. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us the natural evolution. You see, mom is able to provide nutrition and protection, and we don't know what we're going to face. This is a new disease, but there, you know, systematically there is protection in milk against this disease. God never, I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's provided. So like that, the evolution of milk is actually to provide against surprising diseases. And unless and until we find solid evidence that milk acts as a vehicle, which is not so. At the moment, we have no evidence that milk can actually cause COVID-19 in the child. So until we find that, like we did in HIV, for example, I think milk has evolved for that very purpose through nutrition to protect against new, novel, emerging and re-emerging diseases. So absolutely right. 6 months, and then for 2 years with the addition of food at 6 months. I think that's a very wonderful point you have brought out. Valid.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Pramila. So I have a question. So
sure.
This protection in terms of the duration of breastfeeding, so does it remain consistent throughout the period of breastfeeding, or is there any variation in the early months of breastfeeding compared to the later months? Is there any difference, Prof?
Again, that's a great question you've asked. Few things. It is dynamic, as I was saying. It changes even within one feed, like the foremilk and the hindmilk can change in content of fat and protein. And as far as duration is concerned, yes, important. Iron, for example, iron, the micronutrient, can become much less as feeding continues. So iron is also the basis of immunological protection. So of course, colostrum has the highest ability, the earliest milk has the highest ability to protect. It loses its potency because I guess God knows that, you know, by 6 months, you're going to add other things, as well as the fact that the mother has already educated the child, the immune system of the child to now respond. So all in all, the response against infection may be just as well or even better as a child continues to breastfeed because of the education process that has taken place through breastfeeding. But if you look at only content of milk, it will come down with regards to immunological protection because it is most given to the child, the colostrum. The early milk is much more potent. But then, you know, milk has educated the child. So overall, it's difficult to say. The continued feeding up to 2 years would be a very good thing because you continue to give that sort of immune education. So that is how I look at it. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, Prof. Thank you very much. There's an excellent explanation. Thank you so much, Prof. Pramila. Then, thank you, Prof. Pramila. Then we move on to the next, session, next presenter. So oral presenter number 4. And this would be done by Ms. Kuratulan Alvi. She is a postgraduate student from the School of Biosciences, Taylor's University. And her study is on obesity and ovarian cancer. And the judges for this particular session would be Associate Professor Dr. Tiengi Maung from AIMS University, Malaysia, and Dr. Rekha Prabhu from Malacca Manipal Medical University, Malaysia. Thank you, judges, both of you. And Ms. Kuratalan, you can start with your session.
Hello and good morning to everyone. I'm Kuratulan and I'm doing PhD Biosciences from Taylor's University. Today, I am going to present a review about obesity and ovarian cancer. Basically, it is a review to get the results that either obesity can be considered as a risk factor for the ovarian cancer or not. The contents of my presentation will include the introduction, research methodology, literature review, results, conclusion, and the future work. To check the ovarian cancer, we have to see first what is ovarian cancer, which may be related to the obesity or not. Later on, we will see this. First of all, what is ovarian cancer? When the abnormal cells in the ovary begin to multiply out of control and form a tumor, it becomes the ovarian cancer. The types are epithelial, stromal, and the germ cells tumor. The epithelial ovarian cancer is the 90% of the cancer. And the ovarian cancer, the stromal ovarian cancers are just the 7%, and the germ cells tumors that occurs very rarely. But especially in the young girls, it occurs. The epithelial ovarian cancers occurs around the thin tissues, which are around the ovaries, while the stromal ovarian cancer occur inside the tissues, which have the hormone-producing cells, and the germ cells tumor occur in the tissues which produce the egg cells. Stages are from 1 to 4, depending upon either the ovarian cancer has restricted to the one area, or it has spread to the other organs, or it has affected the other organs like liver or kidney. Means the lower number will show the initial stages, and the higher number will show the higher stages. It is the 7th most common cancer in the woman worldwide and highly fatal gynecological cancer, and it is ranked as 8th of all the gynecological cancers. And it accounts for 3.6% of cancers in the woman. Next is, when we see the prevalence of ovarian cancer cases in the 5 years in all continents in WHO 2018, then there is a division is made between all the continents. We can see the most number of patients are, or the high prevalence is in Asia, in the North America. Possibly as China has the highest population, and it has also the highest number of the ovarian cancer patients in 2018. This one is the latest data from the WHO website. Now we can see the prevalence of ovarian cancer in high and low middle income countries. There we can see the comparison of every gynecological cancer has been made between the high and the low middle income countries according to the WHO. But as far as ovarian cancer is considered, the incidence or the chance of occurrence of ovarian cancer and the mortality, the rate of death of ovarian cancer in case of ovarian cancer is almost same in the high and the low middle income countries. So it means the risk factor will also be same in the high and the low middle income countries, because the incidence and mortality of just the ovarian cancer is same as compared to the other cancers which have different incidence or mortality rate in both low or high middle income countries. Now, the risk factor for the incidence of ovarian cancer, we will look into the review about the obesity. Obesity comes under the definition of body mass index. So what is body mass index? It is the weight in kilogram divided by the square of his or her height in meters. Its categories are underweight, which is less than 18.5, normal weight 18.5 to 24.9, overweight 25 to 29.9, and obesity greater than 30. So we will look into the overweight or the obesity. Worldwide prevalence of obesity is nearly tripled between 1975 and 2016, and 39% of the women were overweight and 15% of the women were obese. Age or weight gain, which can also be considered as the risk factor for incidence of ovarian cancer, it is the age of getting weight from normal to overweight category. So we have to look at the age of getting weight of a person, then that either it can be considered as a risk factor or not. Now the problem statement due to which a review was required, that ovarian cancer is a significant problem in the health of women. However, little is known of its etiological factors, including obesity. The risk factor of obesity, age, or weight gain are still poorly understood, and the significance and influence of these parameters on incidence of ovarian cancer is different in their different countries. Aim and objective of this review is to find the influence of obesity as risk factor for incidence of ovarian cancer, and it will also investigate the relationship of obesity, including body mass index, age or weight gain. So the basic aim of the review study is to see obesity as risk factor for the ovarian cancer or not. These are the review paper formulated questions and the hypotheses that have been previously proposed are: is the obesity or is the risk factor for ovarian cancer? And is the age or weight can also be considered as the risk factor for the ovarian cancer along with the obesity? For that, I have this one is the research methodology. The relevant research of database was conducted including the American Springer, NCPI, PubMed, Cancer Organization, and the World Health Organization reports and cancer stats. All the studies that assess the relation between obesity leading to ovarian cancer and obesity as a risk factor for the ovarian cancer were selected for review from the and I tried to review the latest papers, just like the last 5 years papers. Here we can see an overlook of the literature review that in year 2019, a big study was done whose objective was epidemiology and risk factor of ovarian cancer in the world. According to this research, the obesity are still controversial factor for ovarian cancer. We cannot say that it is a risk factor. It is still controversial and more studies are needed. Likewise, in 2018, when the frequency of ovarian cancer with some demographic features are made, no considerable association of ovarian cancer with weight status was seen. So the obesity still is controversial and the further studies are required. Similarly, in 2018, the important factors, the work was done on the important factor in causing ovarian cancer. But more is low fertility and obesity are involved in causing ovarian cancer. So it was seen that obesity is involved in ovarian cancer. But the research here was there that more data from the developing countries is also required because this study was done in the developed countries. So there was a lack of data from the underdeveloped countries. And in 2018, from the World Cancer Research Fund, more weight gain throughout the childhood increased more rate of ovarian cancer, which means the age of weight gain should also be considered for as a risk factor for the ovarian cancer. In 2017, again, the ovarian cancer, the overweight and obesity is considered as a modifiable risk factor, which can cause or cannot cause, and they require the additional research to be for the better etiology. So no association was found in 2017. But increased BMI at adulthood is a risk factor. And but wide association is not known in 2016. Again, in 2016, no impact found. But in one of the research, the increase in the BMI is risk factor, which means obesity and overweight can be considered as a risk factor for the ovarian cancer. But due to the wide etiology of ovarian cancer, the increase in BMI at early age should be investigated further. A large number of the studies have shown that increased body mass index can be considered as a greater risk for ovarian cancer. But as I said earlier, that this is a modifiable risk factor. And obesity and overweight are believed to be related with psychological, social problems along with other health problems. These conditions are needed to be monitored and controlled more effectively, both in developed and underdeveloped countries. So our conclusion is, considering the heavy burden of ovarian cancer on women health, preventive measures as well as the health education, early detection in high risk women are highly recommended. An area that is age or weight gain, this area has not been addressed fully as a risk factor for ovarian cancer. More work is needed to do in that area. And there is a lack of data on the relationship between obesity and ovarian cancer from the low-income countries due to the lack of resources and low awareness level. The results on the basis of which we are saying that ovarian cancer, obesity can be considered as a modifiable risk factor for the ovarian cancer is based on the data which we get from all the developed countries, because there is still a lack of data from the low-income countries. So the future work required is needed to better understand the biological mechanism that underline the association of obesity with ovarian cancer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Kuratulan.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting presentation. And before anyone else, so now the floor is open for the judges first to ask any questions to Ms. Kuratulan. And in the meantime, others can, scan the QR code and share your questions on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kuratulan, for the wonderful presentation. You have nicely explained about the association between obesity and the risk of ovarian cancer. So part of your objective is related to age of weight gain and then obesity, right? So did you come across any literature on that?
No, there is a research gap. In every paper, they have mentioned that you have to look into the age of weight gain. If we will be having data about this, then we can at least control the ovarian cancer. If we have, if we will go through that, this is the age of weight gain, then all will be conscious at that particular age, that we may not have to get obese or overweight to avoid from the ovarian cancer. Everybody has just put the research gap there. There's no particular data available for this gap.
Okay, so you couldn't find it so far?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering.
Okay, so how many research papers did you review?
80 plus.
80 plus.
Yeah,
and what was the duration? Like your slides mentioned only from 2016 to 19. You did not review the previous papers?
Actually, these papers were having the more references, and I just took the papers from the last 5 years, from
Last
19
5
back
years.
to.
Okay, so you did not include the previous papers, I mean, before 5 years, right?
No.
Okay, so any papers from Malaysia?
No.
So you could not find any papers from
Not
here?
relevant to the ovarian cancer.
Not relevant.
I think the papers are present to the other cancers, like cervical cancer and like that, but not to the ovarian cancer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Rekha and Dr. Tiengi. Anybody else has any other question, please?
Chairman, may I pass some comments about this?
Okay, Prof. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry to ask, Ms. Kuratulan is a medical doctor or bioscience graduate, non-medical?
Biosciences.
Okay, because I have to modify my questions so that you are not very much troubled. Oh, sorry. Okay. Have you come across, or in your study, what is the BMI mark beyond which this cancer, ovarian cancer, is common?
It is more common when you having the BMI of 23.
BMI?
Of 23 BMI.
23.
Yeah. It's just a borderline between the normal and the obese.
Overweight.
23, I'm sorry, 23 is in the normal range.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
According to the papers, they were showing that the BMI at this range is also the crucial for the ovarian cancer.
I think that if you refer the papers, I think maybe it is more than 30, because 23 is in the normal range in many countries.
But 30, I think, is the overweight.
Obese, right?
Yeah,
Obese.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think greater than 30 is the overweight.
Okay. I want to also ask something about the prognosis of ovarian cancer in those obese people. Do you study on that? The survival rate and prognosis.
No, no, I have not done the study on the survival rate. I just studied about the how much an obese patient can have the chance of getting ovarian cancer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you come across anything related to the uh, pregnancy, breastfeeding, oral contraceptives, all things related to the ovarian cancer? Anything did you come across in your literature research?
No, I just focused on the obesity. I did not included the other factors, the reproductive factors, and like this.
Yeah, obesity, I agree. What
Yeah.
about the obese becoming pregnant, obese giving breastfeeding, obese with oral contraceptives?
Yeah. Actually, the ovarian cancer patients which were more obese, they were all married according to the literature review. So the obesity or to become the obese is one of the natural factors for the married ones.
Yeah, maybe that for your further research work, I think these all the three has got a very good impact in the incidence as well as in the progression and the prognosis of the obese people with ovarian cancer. Now, why I bring this is, we should make aware the public that obesity is more dangerous than smoking. So smoking is known to be a good carcinogen, but obesity excels the smoking in many ways. So your topic is very important. I think this should be highlighted to the public as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kuratullah.
Okay.
So now we move on to the next presentation. So oral presenter number 5 is going to be Ms. Alia Azari. She is a student from Faculty of Medicine and Defense Health, National Defense University, Malaysia. And her study is on cervical cancer. And the judges for this particular presentation would be Prof. Karutan Chinna and Prof. Dr. Abdul Karim Mira Moidin, both from Taylor's University, Malaysia. So, Ms. Alia, you can now start with your presentation. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Alia. Today, I am presenting a research about knowledge and awareness of cervical cancer among women in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi. Why we choose cervical cancer as our research? It is because the cervical cancer is the third most common cancer in women worldwide. In Malaysia, it's about 1,740 new cervical cancer cases were diagnosed in 2020. Cervical cancer is Malaysia's fourth leading causes of female cancer. Cervical cancer is a disease that develops quite slowly and begins as precancerous condition known as dysplasia. It can be detected by a pap smear, which is a screening test that identifies asymptomatic individuals. A new aspect of cervical cancer prevention have been invented, which is a vaccination against high-risk oncogenic HPVs. Those are the risk factors for cervical cancer. First, is the persistent infection by high-risk human papillomavirus, particularly HPV 16 and 18. Second is having sexual activity at early age and also multiple sexual partners. Next are women with a family history of cervical cancer and also history of sexually transmitted disease are likely to have cervical cancer. Early age of first childbirth and also multiple pregnancies are also the risk factor for this cancer. The next risk factor is early age of menarche. The last one is a woman who is smoking is also have the high risk to get this cancer. Our objective for this research is to investigate the knowledge and awareness about cervical cancer and pap smear among population of women in Camp Sungai Besi. Second, the objective of this research is to investigate the knowledge of respondents about the risk factor of cervical cancer. Cross-sectional design was used in this study among women in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi. A total of 124 are participated. The study was conducted from July to August 2019. Convenient sampling are used in order to select participants in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi. All participants were given a full explanation of the methodology and purpose of this project. Participants were also assured that their participation in study was voluntary and they could refuse to participate if they do not want to. A self-administrated questionnaire are used and consisted of 3 sections. First one is socio-demographic characteristic that has 7 questions. Second is knowledge about cervical cancer risk factor that consists of 10 questions. And the last one is knowledge and awareness about cervical cancer and pap smear that consists of 12 questions. The next few slides are the results we obtained from this research. This graph shows the distribution of respondents based on their demographic characteristic. A total of 124 female participated in this study and 121 completed the questionnaire, giving the response rate of 97.8%. The majority of the respondents were between 31 to 40 years old, which was 45.45%, and the least recorded age was 41 and above, which was total of 19.84%. 65.29% of respondents were married and 29.75% were unmarried. The rest were widow and divorced. Most of the respondents were Malay, 87.6%, followed by Indian, 10.64%, and the least ethnicity were Chinese with 1.65%. This was because area of our research, which is Camp Perdana Sungai Besi, majority populated by Malay ethnicity. As most of the respondents were Malay, it gave out 90.08% of respondents were Muslim and the rest were non-Muslim. The highest educational level recorded in this study was secondary level with 48.76%, followed by tertiary level with 43.78%, and the last one, primary level, was 7.44%. For the English proficiency, most of the respondents have intermediate fluency with 6.12%. This showed women in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi were moderately educated. Those who work in administration ranked the highest with 32.23% among the respondents, and women who work in the military were the least one with 1.65%. Next is the result that we obtained about the knowledge and awareness about cervical cancer and pap smear among women in Camp Sungai Besi. Referring to the graph shown, high percentage of respondents, which were 95.04%, have heard about cervical cancer, but only 77.69% of them have heard about pap smear test. Only 19.83% of those respondents do not know the purpose of the pap smear test. Besides, half of the respondents, which was 92.89%, have done a pap smear test before this. About 65.29% of the women in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi already heard about HPV vaccine. Most of them, about 82.46% and 94.21%, disagreed that pap smear is not needed when there is no complaint and pap smear is not important respectively. 62.81% of the respondents knew that pap smear is not painful and 84.3% knew that pap smear was not costly. Being examined by male examiner will discourage them from getting pap test got strong agreement with 78.51%. only 28.93% of respondents worry if they need further investigation or operation once PET test done, and only 30.52% respondents felt that pap smear only make them worry. Next is the risk factor for cervical cancer that can be found among women in Camp Sungai Besi. From the pie chart shown, we can see the early menarche with 25.5% rank the highest risk factor for cervical cancer that can be found among women in Camp Sungai Besi. Next is followed by sexually active and also multiple pregnancy with 28.9% for each of the risk factor. As a conclusion, from this study shows that mostly women in Camp Sungai Besi are aware about cervical cancer and the risk factor of the cancer. However, there are still a small group of women who still do not aware about this cancer and also the importance of pap smear test, especially women with the low educational level. Hence, this finding emphasize the need to educate and increase awareness among women with the low educational level and the need to educate these women to join some screening program such as free pap smear test that run by Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development. With that, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Alia, for that very interesting presentation. Now we'll take questions first from the judges and then from the audience. For the audience, please scan the QR code to put in your questions. And now the floor is open for the judges to ask Ms. Alia a few questions.
Okay, Ms. Alia.
Prof. Karim and Prof. Karu. Thank you.
Ms. Alia. Ms. Alia. Can you hear me?
Ms. Alia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Why choose Camp Sungai Besi for the study? What's the purpose? Why choose specifically Camp Sungai Besi? Is there high incidence of these cases there? Why the study site we chose Camp Sungai Besi? Any reason?
Because there is no study, there is never study done in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi.
That shouldn't be a reason. Right. Come on, next one. The questionnaire used. Was it validated? Questionnaire? Questionnaire. The questionnaire we used, validated?
Yes, our questionnaire is validated.
In Malaysia? Is it validated in Malaysia? Okay, the questions were they in English or in BM? Questionnaire?
The questionnaire we put in both language, Malay and English.
Okay, when was the data collected? When was the data collected?
We collect the data from July to August 2019.
19, okay. Was it hard copy or is it online administration?
It's a hard copy.
Okay. So generally, what do you feel about? You say it's very low, right? Knowledge is low. Knowledge is it low? Any previous study done on this area elsewhere? Other places in Malaysia? Cervical cancer, knowledge attitude. Any study done?
Yes, for the cervical cancer, there is no study for cervical cancer in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi, but there is study about cervical cancer in others area.
No, cervical cancer. How do you compare to what you found in Sungai Besi compared to other studies? Better or worse? Did you make comparison?
It's more or less the same.
Or the same only?
For our group, we think that the result in Camp Perdana Sungai Besi and other areas is more or less the same because both have moderate awareness about the cervical cancer.
So in discussion, did you mention this? Your discussion, did you mention this? Your discussion, did you mention this?
Yes, we mentioned the comparison in the discussion.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Miss Elia.
Yes.
How was the sample size was calculated?
Come again? It's not clear.
What was your sample size?
Sample size. 121.
I heard that you told us during presentation 134, but in the record it was 124. Now you are telling 121.
There is 124 participated in the study, but only 121 questionnaire are complete. The other three we reject because there is a few part that not filled up by the participants.
Was it the sample size was calculated appropriately? Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
How did you decide sample size start 130 is enough? How do you decide on that? How do you decide sample, okay, we're going to take sample size of 130. How did you decide on that? Okay, Camp Sungai Besi, how many women will be there? Camp Sungai Besi, roughly, estimate. Are they working or are they staying in Camp Sungai Besi?
Some of them are working and some of them are staying.
Roughly how many women will be there in Camp Sungai Besi? Working and staying. 1,000? Possible 1,000?
It's about 1,000.
1,000. So now you're asking whether the 130 is sufficient to represent the 1,000, right? So you
No,
must.
it's not. Cannot present the total.
So you must defend yourself why you went for 130. That's why Prof was asking, right? Why you started going for 130? There must be a rationale, all right? Okay.
Alia, can I ask you a question, Alia? I heard your presentation. Thank you so much. Just wondering, opinion, which is the best platform to use to improve the knowledge of cervical cancer? Which would you, what is the best platform? You know what I mean? How do you do that? Could you do it through vaccination time or what? What is the best platform you think we can use?
We can use social media platform.
Oh, you think that way, huh? Not the vaccination visits or something like that, no, huh? Okay, all right, social media. Okay, thanks.
Earlier, in your presentation, you told us early menarche was one of the important predisposing or predilection for the incidences of carcinoma of the cervix. So what do you mean by early menarche? What was the age in Malaysia?
The early menarche age in Malaysia is 9 and
below. Is that common? Early menarche in that age group, is it common in Sungai Besi? How many cases who had early menarche at that age, 9 to 10? Are you able to hear me? Is there any audio interruption? Am I audible? Chairman, am I audible?
Yes.
Dr. Shwas, am I audible?
Yes, yes, Prof, you are audible. I think there is some problem with maybe Miss Alia's connection, I suppose. Miss Alia, can you hear us now? Miss Alia, can you hear us now? Sorry, Prof. Karim. I think we need to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, we come to the presenter number 6. And by the way, thank you, Alia, if you are still online. And our next presenter is from Nigeria. She is Miss Janet Oluwankia Adeogan. So hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Welcome, Miss Janet. And her study is on impact of COVID-19 on people with disabilities. And the judges for this presentation also will be Prof. Karu and Prof. Karim. Okay, Janet, you can start with your presentation now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Janet Oluwayika Adogun from Nigeria, and I'm presenting a paper titled The Effect of COVID-19 on the People Living with Disabilities in Nigeria. As we all know, COVID-19 is a new strain of coronavirus that has not been previously identified in humans. Now, the COVID-19 is the cause of an outbreak of respiratory illness first detected in Wuhan, Hubei province, China. Now, we should be aware that coronavirus are a large family of viruses that cause illnesses ranging from the common cold to more severe diseases such as the Middle East respiratory syndrome and severe acute respiratory syndrome. Like we all know, this COVID-19 was first discovered in 2019 and has not been previously identified in humans, like I've said earlier. The diseases it causes is called coronavirus disease 2019. In March 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as an outbreak, as a pandemic. Now, the symptoms of COVID-19 are cough, fever, or chills, or shortness of breath, or difficulty in breathing, and so on and so forth. And even congestion, vomiting, nausea, then runny nose. They're all symptoms of COVID-19. Now, when we talk about people living with disabilities in Nigeria, disability can mean anything from poor sight, poor eyesight, to an inability to walk, to complex intellectual or mental health challenges. It can also be the inability to hear, poor level of hearing. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and its optional protocol defined persons with disabilities to include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society or an equal basis with others. Out of Nigeria's estimated population of 200 million, approximately 27 million people live with disabilities. Persons with disabilities are not a homogeneous group. That means they are not a single group. They face multiple and compounding forms of discrimination on the basis of disabilities, but also on other grounds which may lead to situations of exclusion. People living with disabilities are the set of people that suffer most in Nigeria. All over the world, there are over 1 billion people living with some form of disability. People living with disabilities are the most vulnerable among all humans. They are easily faced with high level of inconveniences, unlike other people that are not disabled. In Nigeria, take note, most of the people living with disabilities live below the life standard of which a normal human being should live. What I mean by normal human being, I meant human beings that are without disabilities. Straight to our talk for the day. Impact of COVID-19 on people living with disabilities in Nigeria. The COVID-19 pandemic caused so many changes in the lives and activities of everyone in the world. The world had to embrace the new normal. People living with disabilities encounter daily challenges such as barriers to abilities, minimized access to health facilities, and depression risk. More challenges owing to the COVID-19. WHO recorded over 100 million cases of COVID-19. Almost 150 people have been confirmed to have COVID-19 cases, and 1,753 deaths reported in Nigeria. Many restrictive and control measures, including the adoption of new behavioral changes, for instance, social distance during outdoor movement, limiting touch or tactile contact, recommended by the government, pose in mass challenges to individuals with a visual loss. What I mean by that? Owing to the protocol of COVID-19, the government of Nigeria clearly stated that there should be social distances when you are in the midst of people. And so with this protocol, the people living with disabilities really found it difficult, especially those with visual losses. Behaviors such as physical distances, as well as their social and economic impact, are worsening mental health consequences. Now, during the COVID-19, there was a high level of depression among the people living with disabilities. I worked with some of them during the lockdown, especially students, because I organized a free online learning platform for students living with disabilities. So I have an idea of what they pass through, the mental health consequences of COVID-19, the depressed state of so many of them. Research on the psychological impact of mass trauma, example, natural disaster, flu outbreak, suggests that the pandemic might particularly harm the mental health of marginalized populations who have less access to socio-economic resources and supportive social networks. This was clearly stated by Goldman and Gadier in 2014. Persons with disabilities generally have more health care needs than others, both standard needs and needs linked to their impairments, and are therefore more vulnerable to the impact of low quality or inaccessible healthcare services than others. United Nations further went to state that compared to persons without disabilities, persons with disabilities are more likely to have poor health. Among 43 countries, 42% of persons with disabilities versus 6% of persons without disabilities perceive their health as poor. Now, the objective of my study was the study aimed at examining the effect of COVID-19 on people living with disabilities in Nigeria. Method of data collection. This is the way I collected my data. I used different sources like surveys using the Google Forms. I sent it out to people to fill. Online interviews via WhatsApp. Like I said earlier, I organized a free online learning platform for the physically challenged students in Nigeria. I have over 100 of them in the group. So I was able to have an interview section with most of them. 100 people participated in the survey. The survey is a descriptive survey with a representative sample of people living with visual and hearing impairment. The results show that there are significant effects of COVID-19 on people living with disabilities. Now, my results, so though this is long, but you could see the result of what I came up with. Like the online survey was conducted among 100 people living with disabilities, a questionnaire comprising questions on demographic information, that's 3 knowledge. This demographic information has to do with what their geographical zone in Nigeria, like the south-south, the north-north, the northeast, the southeast, the southwest, and the northwest and north central. And we have knowledge of COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19. These questions were completed via the Google form by participants. And I won't want to waste time on the result, but let's just continue. Now, the number of participants by gender: female 27%, then male were 73%. This is the pie chart of the question. The number of participants by disabilities: 20% were hearing impaired, then 80% were visually impaired. Results about knowledge and impact of COVID-19. From the result I got, 98.6% of people have heard about COVID-19. Then 94.4% are aware that COVID-19 is contagious. 88.9% are aware that COVID-19 incubation stage is between 3 to 14 days. Then the psychosocial impact is 52.8%, the economic impact 55.6%, then the hunger impact is 60.5%. In online interviews through WhatsApp, students with disabilities say access to equitable education was abandoned owing to the pandemic, which moved face-to-face classes to online ones. The move to online learning really slowed many students living with disabilities down. Like I said earlier, people with disabilities need health care and health programs for the same reason anyone else does, to stay well, active, and a part of the community. However, having a disability does not mean a person is not healthy or that he or she cannot be healthy. The current pandemic, in conclusion, the current pandemic, followed by a nationwide emergency lockdown, to slow down the spread of virus had serious impact on people living with disabilities and at most cases endangered their lives in Nigeria. Like I earlier said in the result, education of many of the students living with disabilities was greatly affected because there were no provisions to meet their needs virtually. Social distances during outdoor movements, limited touches. This posed great challenges to individuals with visual impairment and those who are physically challenged. Because of the social distance, and most of the visually impaired rely on not disabled people to help them with mobility. But because of this pandemic, a lot of people are scared to even touch or hold hands. So this social distance has caused a lot of mobility issues among the visually impaired people. This serious impact included challenges in access. There were also challenges in access to health facilities. The government, along with profit or non-profit sector, should consider initiating great inclusive approaches in all sectors while planning how to reduce the impact of the pandemic. Thank you very much. I'm Janet Adengu, presenting for the ICON-MEGOPIC 2021. Thank you very much.
Let us thank Ms. Janet for a very interesting presentation. But I stand corrected. She didn't, she's not a student, and she's not also, has joined this webinar. And so there won't be, any questions, and she won't be also assessed. So we don't need the involvement of the judges as well. But in any case, it was quite an interesting, presentation. Coming from, first thing is coming from, Africa, the continent, and also from a country which is politically, economically, and also in terms of civil instability, so infighting and so on. So it's a country with a lot of things which have gone wrong, and hopefully they are now improving. So these people will definitely face more more special and more challenging circumstances. So we do get some bird's eye view about the issues faced by a different continent with a different background in many ways. So that marks the end of the sixth oral presentation session. It is time for expert talk, and the first one is by our own Prof. Caro from Taylor's University. And in the meantime, so let me thank all the speakers and the presenters for this session so far. Now, the next one will be by Prof. Karutan China. His talk is going to be on COVID-19 curve. And we all come across this COVID-19 curve about flattening the curve and so on. Even general public also is quite aware about this terminology. So the general public also is aware about this terminology, that is COVID curve, flattening the curve, and so on. So Prof. Karutan is currently, he's an associate professor in the School of Medicine in Taylor's University, Malaysia. He graduated from the University of Malaya, Malaysia, with a Bachelor of Science with Education. And then he did his Master of Science in Applied Statistics from Michigan State University, USA. And then the PhD from Multimedia University. Prof. Karu's areas of expertise include mathematical sciences, statistics, and multivariate analysis. His research output includes numerous grants, publications in journals, books, and presentations at local, national, and international conferences and meetings. With that, I welcome Prof. Karu to start with your presentation. Thank you, Prof. Karu.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our presentation today, Understanding the COVID Curve. So we're going to talk about some epidemic curves, compartmental models of epidemiology, COVID-19 models, and how to flatten the COVID curve. Epidemic curve. An epidemic curve, also known as the epi curve or the epidemiological curve, just a statistical chart used to visualize the onset of a disease progression, right? Progression of a disease outbreak. Epi curve typically displays a graph of the onset of the illness among cases in outbreak. It contains a two-axis, horizontal axis, shows the date of the illness onset, and the vertical axis, the number of cases. For a COVID-19 outbreak, major agencies display cases differently. WHO shows graphs based on the date of the case reporting. CDC used to display cases by the onset of disease. Of late, CDC has also started reporting cumulative cases on the date of case reporting. In COVID pandemic, the curve refers to the projected number of people who will contract the disease over a period of time. It's not a hard prediction, but a theoretical number that can be used to model the virus spread. The curve takes on different shapes depending on the virus infection rate. In a steep curve, the virus spreads exponentially, and the total number of cases skyrockets to a peak in a short time period. The infection curves, a steep rise, also have a steep fall. After the virus infection, as a virus infected pretty much everyone who can be infected, the case numbers begin to drop exponential too. Compartmental models in epidemiology. There are several models developed over the time. All the models are have been tested for mathematical vigor using differential equations and things. We have the SIS model, SIR, SEIR, and now we have several modified SEIR models. Let's start with model number one, the SIS, S for susceptible, I for infectious. So we have these susceptible, who are individuals who are not infected, however, could become infected, the S. They may become infected and become infectious, already been infected here. After the infection, there's no long-lasting immunity. They may come back to the pool of susceptible again. Like example, common cold, we have the infection, doesn't mean we are infected, we are immune forever. We are also susceptible for another attack. So that's the SIS model. Next, the SIR model has one more compartment that's a recovered. Susceptible, infectious, and recovered. We've gone through the first two. Recovered, individuals who recover from the ailment and assumed to be immune thereafter. So there is a lasting immunity here. Example, in a dengue infection, people with the same serology, they may not be infected again by the same virus again. So in SIR model, the three graphs, three curves, susceptible, infected, and recovered. So blue line is a suspected, susceptible, red line is infected, and the purple line is a recovered. So as the infection from the onset of the pandemic, as the infection increases, the number susceptible decreases. And over time, these infected people become recovered. So we have, as the disease pandemic over the time, infection increases, susceptible decreases, and recovered increases thereafter. Now, what's important is this part of the curve. This is steep. A steep curve would mean that more people will get infected in a shorter time period. So that will have a huge impact on our healthcare system. Third model, we add one more compartment, exposed, to the SIR model. So exposed are individuals who will be infected, but not yet infectious themselves. They are susceptible, then become exposed, and the exposed become infectious, and thereafter become immune. Now, under the exposed, not everybody will show the infection, won't be symptomatic. Some may be asymptomatic. Quite a large proportion of those infected are asymptomatic of COVID pandemic. This is a dangerous group. They're infected, they're infectious, but they're asymptomatic. They're still a population spreading the disease. So ultimately, whether they are asymptomatic or symptomatic, they recover and become immune. So these are models that are often used for COVID modeling. Now we have 4 curves under this model. Again, this one line, that's an infection, exposed. Exposed. As the exposed increases, the green line, infectious increases too. So the infectious increases, the number susceptible decreases. This model is much more complex, 4 equations, 4 curves. And as the recovery increases, the recovered population increases. So now we have susceptible green line, we have exposed, we have infectious green line, and we have the recovered, the brown line. Of late, some researchers in China, they modified the SIR model to bring in the quarantine and hospitalization. They still use a base SIR model, but they brought in more compartment for the quarantine and hospitalization. So susceptible or exposed can be quarantined, and certain number of people in quarantine may become infectious. Those infectious people, infectious with symptoms, will be hospitalized, and ultimately all 3 may recover. So that's a modified version of the SEIR model used during the pandemic in Wuhan. Now we have even more complicated curves. But basically, we're adding on the H and the Q, the bottom 2 lines, H and the Q. Otherwise, basically, they are SEIR model. We're adding the quarantine and hospitalization. Now, what's important here is the light blue line is hospitalization. If this line becomes steeper, then it's a major problem for the healthcare system. It all depends on the disease pandemic. So this experience in Wuhan, he and R, they try to model the actual and the predictor recovered in hospitalization. The red line is for the recovered, blue line for hospitalization. Initially, the observed and predicted are very close. Thereafter, during this time period, even though they follow the same trend like this, the differences become a bit wider. But nevertheless, we're able to see the pattern, that curve, right? How things increase for your recovered, and hospitalization, that's the max, and then it decreases. Again, watch for this. Is it too high for our hospital system to manage? Next, flattening the curve. cases over time, as we discussed earlier. So this is a curve. Let's call it COVID curve. The number of cases increase, will come to 1 max. After that, the cases infection will decay and will come down. Now compare these two curves. What's the difference between the blue and the green? For same number of cases, for the same number of total cases, here this graph is very steep, right? Cases rise very fast. Whereas on the right hand side, the green line, for the same number of cases, this looks much more gentle. So cases rise slowly. So what's the consequence of this? Faster curve rise quicker, faster the curve rises, the quicker the healthcare system gets overloaded. And the consequence, patients are forced to go without ICU beds, right? Hospital run out of basic supplies, right? Many patients are sent back home. The hospital can't cater anymore, right? A flatter curve assumes the same number of people ultimately get infected, but over a longer time period. So this means less stress healthcare system, fewer hospital visits, fewer sick people being turned away. So our healthcare system still can function during this pandemic. So that's why it's very important. The curve, does it rise fast or is it flatter? So our system handle, let's say, only this number of cases. That's where capacity is in terms of what? Wards, ICU beds, PPEs, incubation facility, etc. That's all our system can handle. So what happens when the number of cases beyond what we can handle? That's where the problem starts. Many patients go untreated. Many patients are turned away. Our system already reached. So that's a problem. So what's the solution? Solution number one, very simple, improve our healthcare system facilities. Example, 5 wards, make it 50 wards, send back all the patients back, change the whole hospital, COVID hospital, ICU beds, the 10 beds for COVID. Now send back all the heart patients, everybody, make it 20 ICU beds. Is it feasible? So what happened to other patients who need care as well? So this is, looks simple, but this is not feasible, right? Beyond certain limits. So this solution is not feasible. So what are the solutions? Let's work on the curve, right? Collective action must be taken to make this slope gentle. Remember, the faster the curve rises, we have trouble. And to make this gentle for a unit time, example is 1 week, how many cases are going to come in? We have to flatten, we have to lower this number. So that is flatten. Without intervention, for the same unit time, this number of cases, with some intervention, some collective action taken, for the same time interval, we have much lesser number of cases. So the curve is flatter. So we are flattening the curve. So some collective actions like introducing personal hygiene, people are practicing hygiene, safety measures, face masks, community, social distancing, environment, cleaning surfaces, disinfecting faces, enforcement, MCO, stay-at-home order, all this will help to bring down the number of cases, the rapid increase of the cases. So our healthcare system capacity is not reached. So that's what I mean by flattening the curve. Now, this is possible, and this what has been done in several countries, but other countries are either ignorant, right? They are not doing most of it. So they are paying the price. That's it. Without speedy and coordinated public health action, such as all this, even countries like US, they didn't follow this strictly. But certain countries like New Zealand, they followed this. They were able to limit the number of cases, rise of the cases with these simple measures. The goal to flatten the curve reduces the daily rate of new cases. So the number of cases can be effectively handled by the healthcare system, right? So, but the flattening the curve itself does not guarantee the reduction of the total number of cases during the pandemic. The graph will be there. The curve will be there, right? But determined by other factors like vaccination. Fortunately, after 1 year, we have these facilities. Hopefully, we'll be able to suppress the virus infection. An analogy, the toilet analogy by Charles Babbage. Imagine there's only one toilet in the office. There are several people in the office, they want to go to the toilet. Imagine one toilet, many people, who goes first? What kind of situation will create? Unfortunately. There are more toilet bowls. So there will be sufficient toilet bowls for the number of people. There are feasible solution. What's the other alternative? Still single toilet, space them out. And then go every 10 minutes, one person goes out. Isn't it what social distancing is? So this can be applied in COVID pandemic to flatten the curve and reduce number of infections going up steeply, and our hospital system can still function. These are some of the references. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Karu. That was an excellent presentation about flattening of the curve, and I'm sure a lot of people here, the doctors and the non-doctors, so I'm sure they would have got a very clear idea about flattening of the curve. And may I request Prof. Karu to clarify or explain certain things if people have any doubts or any questions. And audience can scan the QR code to ask questions. While the audience does that, Prof. Karu, I have a few questions. It's not really questions. I just want to test my own understanding about your talk. So flattening the curve, so it doesn't reduce the number of people infected, but the number of people infected per day, it should reduce. Yeah. And the total number of, I think, infected people, it depends. For example, after vaccination and herd immunity, that is one of the ways. And also, I think if the society, is very dedicated and eradicates the virus by means of social distancing and so on. For example, so what happened in Taiwan and New Zealand. But other than that, more and more people are likely to get infected, and slowly the herd immunity, will still be achieved. So, is my understanding correct, Prof. Karu?
Yeah. The model assumes all the people will be infected over the time period. Theoretically, that's what the model assumes. But with the social distancing, other things, we can delay the onset or the number of cases per unit time so that our hospital system can still manage. Other patients can be as well treated. So that's flattening the curve. By vaccination, all that is suppress the disease, right? Suppress the disease. So we can recover, the whole world may recover faster in that sense. That's a
true. I understand. Okay, thank you very much. So any questions from the audience? Prof. Karim, you have any question, Prof?
Of course, I do not have a question, simple appreciation. It was an excellent presentation by Prof. Karutan as usual. And I used to say that statistics is the backbone of epidemiology, and epidemiology is the lifeline of public health. And he's an expert in both. So his way of presentation of a tough topic was so simple, and it was very, very nice. I really appreciate him by heartily. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Prof. Karu. Thank you, Prof. Karim.
Thank you.
So any more questions from anyone else, please? So if there are no more questions, then we move on to the next session. Thank you very much, Prof. Karu.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for the answers you provided for some of our questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now we move on to the next session. So this one is by Prof. Andrew. This is the last expert talk from this channel. So I will invite now Professor Henry Volodymyrovich Bondarenko. Okay, so he'll be discussing about management of COVID, his team's experience with the management of COVID-19 in Ukraine. And this management is a highly relevant topic. And also we know that different countries have used like a lot of drugs, antiviral drugs, and anticoagulants, and so on. So far there is no proven antiviral medication. So despite so much of attempts of using various drugs, starting from remdesivir and favipiravir and so on. Yeah. So so far there is nothing proven as of now. So Prof. Andriy, he graduated with honors from Kharkiv State Medical University, Ukraine, and he did internship in infectious diseases, and then he did diploma and master study in infectious diseases from the same university. Currently, Prof. Andriy is a professor of infectious disease, working in the Department of Infectious Disease in the Regional Clinical Infectious Hospital, Kharkiv, Ukraine. He is a consultant in the ICU of the hospital and at the Regional Specialized Hepatology Center. From 2007 to 2014, he worked as a chief specialist in infectious diseases in the Department of Public Health Service. So that means he has got a lot of experience in terms of public health, as well as of late management of COVID. He has received several awards and honors in public health, and recently of note is a diploma for struggle against COVID-19 from the Ministry of Public Health of Ukraine. This was awarded to him only last year. So he has grants and numerous publications in journals, books, and various conferences and meetings. So quite an impressive achievements by Prof. Andriy. So without further delay, so I welcome Prof. Andriy to start with his presentation. But at the meantime, may I remind the audience that Prof. Andriy has been busy since this morning. It's morning hours in Ukraine, so he is not physically attending this webinar. So obviously, so there won't be any question and answer session. Okay, so can we start with Prof. Andriy's presentation? Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the organizing committee who participated in this important and stimulating event. And I would like to extend my gratitude to the chairman of the conference, Professor Ruslipin Nordin, for invitation. My presentation, I want to start from the words of the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, about pandemic of COVID-19. This is a time for facts, not fear. This is a time for rationality, not rumors. This is a time for solidarity, not stigma. Several words about situation in Ukraine. Ukraine is the largest European country. And during the period of time from March till February, we had 1.22 million of confirmed cases of COVID-19 from 41.6 million of Ukrainian population. If we compare Ukraine with top 5 countries in parameters, daily new confirmed cases per million and case fatality rate, you'll see that Ukraine is in the middle position by both of them. Our hospital is located in Kharkiv, which is the second largest city in Ukraine, with population of 1.44 million people. During the period of time from March till February, we had more than 53,000 confirmed cases and more than 700 deaths. The main group of population which was affected were from 30 to 69 years old. The lethal outcome we had at the age groups from 60 to 89. Regional Clinical Infectious Disease Hospital is the clinical base of Kharkiv National Medical University and Kharkiv Medical Academy of Postgraduate Education. And it was the first designated hospital for management of COVID-19 patients in Kharkiv. And all suspected or confirmed cases in the city were compulsorily admitted to it. From March till February, we treated more than 5,000 patients. It is about 10% of all confirmed cases in Kharkiv. All the hospitalized patients were managed by an expert panel consisting of experienced clinicians from clinical medicine, infectious diseases, radiology, microbiology, and pathology departments. We have the 8th version of National Protocol on treatment of COVID-19 disease. And it was based on these 3 guidelines which we have. And beside that, in our hospital, we conduct several clinical trials. And I want to discuss with you one of these trials which we have. But at the beginning, let's look on this picture. 2 main processes are thought to drive the pathogenesis of COVID-19. Early in the course of the infection, the disease is primarily driven by viral replication. Later in the course, the disease is driven by exaggerated immune inflammatory response to the virus. Next, what we have is the affection of the lungs. And you see on the picture, non-typical affection of the lungs. And we aren't talking about typical in our understanding pneumonia. SARS-CoV-2 virus doesn't rapidly infect in large regions of the lungs like other viruses. Instead, it sets up shop in multiple small areas of the lungs. The virus then hijacks the lungs' own immune cells, macrophages, and T cells, and uses them to spread across the lungs over a period of many days or even weeks, like multiple wildfires spreading across a forest. As cytokine storm triggers an exaggerated inflammatory response that may damage the blood vessels, kidneys, and lungs, and increase formation of blood. Ultimately, the cytokine storm was more harmful than the virus itself. And disease control, you may see that among patients who may have such severe and critical disease are about 9. Everyone may be seriously ill with infection, but for some people, the risk is outcome may be lethal. You see that at the first place, we have those who have cardiovascular diseases and diabetes mellitus. As I've already told, we conduct several clinical trials, and I want to discuss with you the role of glucocorticoids in the treatment of COVID-19 disease. It is well known that glucocorticoids are useful for inhibiting the inflammatory storm via suppression of cytokine levels and pro-inflammatory gene expression. They reduce endothelial leakage while effectively stopping the inflammatory cascade through decreasing capillary permeability and low leukocyte migration to the inflammation site. Effects are dose dependent, with immunosuppressive effects seen mostly at higher doses. The anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressive immediate effects of glucocorticoids are supposed to be mediated through non-genomic actions within the cell and occur with high doses. On this slide, you see publications on which you may find information about the usage of methylprednisolone in COVID-19 patients. An early short course in moderate to severe COVID-19 patients reduced escalation of care and improved clinical outcomes. Moreover, a high dose and short term provide a better prognosis of patients with coronavirus acute respiratory distress syndrome. And it is interesting to know that concerning coronavirus acute respiratory distress syndrome, it was reported that methylprednisolone appears to have reduced the risk of death. And it was found that severe COVID-19 patients improved their oxygenation significantly with no negative impact on viral clearance. However, due to the fact that the effect of corticosteroids is of short duration, after the discontinuation of hormone therapy, a new outbreak of the disease activity may be observed. And our know-how is to use high-dose intravenous methylprednisolone therapy by this scheme. So the reduction in the dose of methylprednisolone begins and the reducing in the level of C-reactive protein, no less than 15%. The cumulative dose should not exceed 6 grams by the whole course. The usage of methylprednisolone may have several advantages. It has greater affinity for the glucocorticoid receptor, high penetration in lung tissue with longer residence time, and high potentiality for both genomic and non-genomic activity. The scheme is used to achieve the rapid therapeutic effect and to reduce adverse effects of glucocorticoids. The adverse effects from glucocorticoids appear to be minimal in such scheme. When to start treatment? In early pulmonary phase or in the late pulmonary phase, but not earlier than 7 days from the beginning of the clinical symptoms. We have several criteria for starting of such therapy, and the first one is the age of the patient, less than 65. The C-reactive protein level over 50 units or its progressive increasing by 5 times and higher at the days from 8 to 15. Leukocyte level or absolute level of lymphocytes, increased ferritin level or the level of interleukin-6, plus CT scan picture where we have lung infiltrates more than 50% with their progression, fever 38 degrees and higher for more than 3 days, and a rapid tendency to reduce saturation. High-dose intravenous methylprednisolone therapy was shown to decrease activity of the systemic inflammatory response severity of coagulation disorders, and contribute to recovery of gas exchange lung function. No patients required an enhancement of respiratory support. Such scheme was well tolerated and did not cause bacterial complications. Given the high efficacy and low cost of such therapy, it could be one of the promising approaches to the management of patients with severe COVID-19. At the end of the January 2021, we got from the World Health Organization a new guideline on which we have a strong recommendation for the usage of systemic corticosteroids in patients with severe and critical COVID-19. And while healthcare facilities have been using a wide range of medications to treat the virus and symptoms, there is not yet an improved medication regimen, and only benefit which we had in our patients we had due to the usage of corticosteroids. So when we are talking about COVID-19, we are talking about steroid responsive disease. Early recognition and effective suppression of the cytokine storm may be life-saving in severe or critical patients. We recommend high-dosage intravenous methylprednisolone to address the immediate need to reduce the rising mortality in risk group population. Timely and appropriate application of methylprednisolone could avoid the need for invasive mechanical ventilation and improve the outcomes of critical patients. Further studies are needed to determine prognostic criteria of progression and optimal time for initiation of corticosteroid therapy. Thank you again for organizing this conference. I hope you continue the series, and I wish you all the best with that. Thank you.
Okay, that was about Prof. Andre, and in his absence, we all need to thank him for his video talk. Thank you very much, Prof. Andre, once again. And also, I think this was the only session which focused so much on management of COVID-19. So, based on this particular talk, so there is less focus on antiviral drugs rather than managing the cytokine storm and subsequently anticoagulation and so on. And so that's why high dose methylprednisolone. So that's what Prof. Andre stressed a lot about. And also I would presume because why in diabetics, so the mortality rate isn't going to be much higher is because of I think one of the factors could be the steroids. Steroids definitely are helpful. I mean, as per many studies, high dose steroids, but then that's going to worsen the diabetes as well. Yeah, so it could have there could be some limitations of use of high dose methylprednisolone in diabetics, especially poorly controlled. Okay. So now we have come to the end of these sessions in this channel, but before that, before we conclude here, so may I request you all to key in the details in the evaluation form. So one of the ways to appreciate the efforts of the organizing committee and thank them. Also thank the speakers and the presenters and those who participated in the discussion. So far this has been an excellent session, and it is very educational as well. And with this, I extend my deepest gratitude to all our speakers and presenters for their valuable talks and also contributions towards research in many areas. So we have covered a lot of important topics ranging from COVID to obesity with maternal health and so on. Now with this, everyone now can join the main Zoom meeting room for the announcement of winners and the closing talks. Thank you all for your patience and your contributions. Thank you.